Mist still clung to the riverbanks of the Trident when dawn broke. Thin wisps of silver curling above blood-soaked reeds like the departing spirits of the fallen. A salty tang rose from distant spray where the fords widened toward the sea, marrying itself to the copper scent that always follows a great killing. Crows wheeled overhead, their raucous calls echoing across the water in greedy celebration. Beneath them, men moved with the slow, reverent quiet that comes only after battle. Voices hushed not by command, but by the enormity of what had transpired. 4,000 corpses littered the shallows and the churned mud alike, bright banners drowning in crimson pools. And on the stone shelf, overlooking the fords, Prince Rhaegar Targaryen, armor cracked, shoulders slick with drying blood, remained astride a lathered black courser, watching the river claim Robert Baratheon's great warhammer as it spiraled into the depths. Only when the weapon vanished beneath churning coils did Rhaegar draw a ragged breath. Every gust of wind seeming to carry shouts from another life. Tourney cheers at Harrenhal. The flutter of blue roses. The whisper of a woman's voice in a solitary tower. The clamor of the battlefield had become an empty hush, and with it came the staggering realization that he was not dead. That he had not failed. That prophecy might still be mended. His helm, wrought in the likeness of a dragon rearing, hung heavy in the crook of his arm, its enameled scales flecked with mud. He turned it slowly, studying the dents where Robert's hammer had struck. Another inch and steel would have split. Rhaegar's pale hair, unbound and darkened with sweat, whipped across his cheeks. Sir Barristan Selmy joined him, reins wrapped in a gauntleted fist. The old knight's cloak was tattered, its once immaculate white fouled with gore, yet his posture was unbowed. "The field is ours, your grace," he said, using the title unconsciously. "One more omen of the turning world. Lord Baratheon's host is broken. Those who live scatter to the Stormlands." Rhaegar did not correct the honorific. He felt its weight settle over him like fresh plate. "How many fled?" "Perhaps 800, my prince. Fewer every hour. Lord Jon Arryn was wounded and carried north. Lord Stark, we have yet to find him." At that, something in Rhaegar's expression eased, though guilt followed swiftly. Ned Stark had not sought this war, but Robert's death might harden him beyond reach. Rhaegar stared once more across the water. His cloak, black velvet richly embroidered with rubies, had torn free during the melee. The riverbed now glittered with shards of broken gemstones. The sight pricked him with strange sorrow. Those rubies had marked him prophecy's champion, yet when the water washed them away the world had not ended. Perhaps, he mused with bitter amusement, some visions were born of vanity rather than truth. "Gather every corpse," he commanded at last, voice hoarse. "Highborn and common, friend or foe. We will send their ashes to their families, and the crows will dine only where we allow." Selmy inclined his head. "It will be done." His horse cantered down the slope, barking orders. A hush followed, filled only by the grinding of leather and chain. Rhaegar remained fixed, listening to the river. Memory drifted, Lyanna's laughter in the Godswood at Winterfell. A spark of mischief behind gray eyes too old for her years. He had thought to protect her. Protect them all. From the madness of his father's reign, to claim the Iron Throne himself and right what had gone crooked. But war had proved an ungovernable beast. Even victory felt poisoned, for the North and Stormlands would not forget blood spilled. And Lyanna. Gods. Lyanna was yet hidden away behind Donnered walls in the Dornish marches, tended by midwives who knew nothing of crowns. If she lived, if the child lived, it would take more than swords to safeguard them now. The march south to King's Landing lasted 9 days. Rhaegar led in silence, helm at his saddlebow, red smoke trail pennons snapping above his vanguard. What men remained of Robert's coalition shadowed them at a distance, a ragged thread of scouts and deserters. But none dared attack. News of the usurper's death traveled faster than ravens, and Baratheon loyalists melted into villages or swore fealty anew. Crossing the Blackwater Rush felt like stepping from nightmare into fever dream. The city's gates stood open, small folk crowding rooftops to glimpse the golden dragon banners fluttering along the causeway. Somewhere within the red keep the Mad King brooded over wildfire caches, his mind fuming with betrayals, real and imagined. Rhaegar's boots scraped marble as he strode the cavernous throne room. The air smelled of burnt sage, a vain effort by Grand Maester Pycelle to mask the odor of Aerys's unwashed robes. The Iron Throne loomed, forged by fire and cruelty, yet the man seated upon it looked shrunken. Wisps of silver hair plastered to a bony scalp, nails black with grime from scratching unseen foes. The hall was unnaturally quiet. Lords clustered at the periphery, eyes downcast, breath held. "My son returns," Aerys rasped, voice echoing. "The rebels are broken, yes? You have slain the stag?" "The war's greatest fury died upon the Trident," Rhaegar said. "Yet peace will require mercy as well as iron. Robert Baratheon's corpse drifts north. His house must be shown leniency, or we will reap only seeds of further treason." "Help. Mercy." Aerys' lips peeled back. "Mercy is the luxury of the safe? Were you safe when his hammer shattered your rubies, boy? I hear whispers that you bled in the shallows, shrieking like a birthing sow." A ripple of disquiet swept the lords. Rhaegar tightened his jaw. "I stand unbroken before you, father. The realm stands beside me. Let us restore it together." "Together," the king murmured, then giggled. A thin, cracked sound. "Together? Did you conspire together with your Dornish whore when you stole her from her betrothal bed? Did you conspire together with these traitor lords when they raised banners at your whispering?" "Me?" Rhaegar's knuckles blanched where they rested on his sword's pommel. Eyes turned to him. Lord Connington with hard, admiring steadiness. Lord Tywin Lannister with careful calculation. Prince Luwin Martell, silent beneath the Kingsguard's white. The game they played atop those marble tiles was older than steel. Any answer might trigger wildfire. So Rhaegar bowed his head, as prince to father. Though in that gesture, the hall sensed a tremor coming storm. "I conspired only for the good of the Seven Kingdoms," he said. "I return triumphant. Allow me to shoulder the burdens your health can no longer bear." Aerys's voice fell to a whisper. "You would steal the crown from my brow. I would preserve it, in your name." Aerys' hand trembled over the armrest. Over hidden blades lodged between rusted swords. "A crown is preserved by fear, not love. Fear of fire. Fear of the dragon. They have forgotten, but I will make them remember." His gaze darted toward the pyromancer Lucerys, lingering near a tapestry. The man bowed deeply, sleeves shimmering with green glass vials. Rhaegar felt the chill of prophecy's shadow. Wildfire naphtha stored beneath the city. Rumor said, caches enough to turn stone to slag. His father had dreamt of a holocaust that would rebirth a kingdom purified by flame. Rhaegar saw only ashes and the death of children. He advanced one measured step. "But there is yet time to show strength without ruin. Grant me leave to dispense justice. We will hold a great feast, invite every lord who bent knee. They will look upon the royal house united, father and son, renewed." "Now?" The king's eyes flickered, dull embers buried in sunken sockets. Pycelle shuffled forward, all grandfatherly concern. "Your grace, the prince's wisdom is manifest. Let the realm witness the renewal of royal harmony." Aerys licked cracked lips. "A feast." His tongue flicked again as though tasting charred meat. "Yes." Laced with wildfire dancing in the hearths, scorching away treachery. "We shall invite them all." "Danderwad." Rhaegar bowed once more, concealing the sick twist in his stomach. Above them, heavy stone vaults seemed to sag, pregnant with unseen flame. That night, candle smoke wafted through the royal chambers in lazy spirals, carrying with it the hush of secrets. Rhaegar stood before a map spanning a massive oaken table. Each holdfast meticulously inked, each burrow notched in red and black. His finger traced the king's road northward, toward the shadow of the Tower of Joy, though few alive knew its name. Dawn would see him dispatch riders to Dorne, trusted knights bearing sealed missives to Howland Reed, to Prince Doran Martell. Letters promising safe passage, letters speaking of love and heirs, and a reluctant vow. For Lyanna must be protected, hidden if need be beneath a forged identity until the realm grew kinder. Behind him, the chamber door opened. Queen Rhaella entered, her face drawn but eyes hard. "He will not yield what is his," she murmured. "You know that." "I know," Rhaegar said, turning. Firelight glittered against the polished dragon heads of his vambraces. Viserys asked if he might see the dragons, Rhaella added, voice growing wistful. "He does not comprehend that they are long dead. Perhaps one day he will ride living ones," said Rhaegar, though the words tasted like hopes ground to dust. He watched her untie the ribbons of her shawl, hands trembling. Age had touched her more gently than it would him, hair silver gold under lamplight. Still, sorrow lined her brow. Decades of terror had carved it deep. "I pray for that day," she whispered. "But Viserys will not ride anything if wildfire consumes us all. You must act." He nodded. Action, yes. Yet regicide carried its own curse. Rhaegar thought of Maegor the Cruel, of the Blackfire usurpers, of Aenys who wept blood. "I will not plunge a blade into my father's back," he said softly. "Then find another way." She rested a hand upon his cheek. He closed his eyes, letting the gesture steady him. At last she withdrew, leaving him alone with the map and the silent promise of dawn. 2 days later, ravens winged out in all directions, scrolls bearing the royal seal pressed tight against ebony legs. They carried summons to lords great and small. Attend the Red Keep. Witness Robert Baratheon's reputed lover brought forth for judgment. See treachery punished and loyalty rewarded. To the realm it signaled triumph. To Rhaegar it was a call to stand before a pyre, for he suspected his father meant to parade Ned Stark's beloved sister as a harlot, condemning her to flames to break northern hearts and prove Targaryen fire absolute. In the small hours before the sun could unveil dread, Rhaegar convened a council within Maegor's holdfast, choosing allies with caution. Ser Barristan stood beside him. Sir Arthur Dayne a silent sentinel at the door, Connington leaning upon the table, and Elia Martell seated, draped in crimson silk. Though pale from lingering illness, Elias' gaze shone keenly upon each man. Scars of grief lay between her and her husband. Yet in this moment, she wore the mantle of Princess of Dragonstone and Mother of Heirs. "Our king plots madness," Rhaegar began, dispensing with pretense. "If we let him act, everything gained upon the Trident will be lost in a single spark. We require swift certainty. The wildfire must be seized. And father must be contained." "Die," Connington snorted. "Contained like a rabid dog behind iron bars, or contained 6 feet beneath the crypts?" "Jon," Elia rebuked gently. Barristan ran a hand across his white silver beard. "Solemn. Kingsguard oaths are explicit. Yet our first duty is the realm. Prince Luwin feels as I do, but without consensus among us 7 we risk division." Arthur Dayne spoke at last, voice soft as falling snow yet edged with dawn steel. "Eris can be removed without blood if we move under cover of darkness. A sleeping potion in his wine. He wakes in a secure cell. Let Rhaegar send as Prince Regent, ruling in his name until Parliament of Lords declares otherwise." "Demder Bay." Connington laughed darkly. "And pray he drinks?" "No. The king distrusts every cupbearer save his pyromancers." Rhaegar tapped the map. "The wildfire stores lie beneath the guild hall of the alchemists, the dragon pit, and beneath each sept in the city. We strike there first, remove the fuel, and father's threat becomes words." "Who leads?" Barristan asked. "I will," Rhaegar said. "And?" "Arthur. Jon, you take a sworn brother to the king's chambers." The door thudded open. Prince Viserys darted in, flaxen hair flying. "Rhaegar, come quick." Father's ordered the pyromancers to the throne room. "He says he'll show the realm true dragonfire." The boy's wide violet eyes brimmed with fear. A hush as cold as northern snows settled over the council. The moment had come faster than any could plan. Rhaegar's pulse hammered. "Arthur, gather every white cloak loyal to me. Barristan, secure the queen and Viserys. Take them to the cellars beneath Maegor's. Jon, hold the gate to the keep. No one in or out without my command." "Them, sir." He knelt to Viserys, gripping the child's shoulders. "Do as Sir Barristan says, guard mother." Viserys nodded, lower lip trembling. Barristan swept him away without question. Connington drew steel. "I'll see that gate held till the stranger claims me." The throne room floor gleamed with fresh polished swords when Rhaegar entered, helmed once more in black and ruby. Flames sputtered in iron braziers, their reflected tongues licking half-worth halls. Atop the iron throne, Aerys waited like a spider, pyromancer Lucerys kneeling at his side with crystal globes that pulsed sickly green. "My loving son," Aerys hissed, nails clicking against metal. "Come closer and see what destiny offers. Behold the dragon's breath." He seized a globe, held it aloft. Light refracted, casting emerald threads across stone. Rhaegar tried calm. "Father, you need not perform such spectacle. The realm already trembles at Targaryen might." "Trembles?" They laughed behind closed doors. The king threw the globe. It burst against a column, green flames roaring upward. Heat blistered Rhaegar's cheek. Gold cloaks lining the hall shrank back. Lucerys proffered another sphere. "King of Ashes, shall we ignite the city?" "The caches are primed." Rhaegar's breath turned to ash. He stepped forward. "Give that to me." Aerys clutched the sphere to his chest. "You'd steal my fire?" "Never. I will burn them all. Burn Starks and Lannisters, Dorne and Dragonstone alike. From the ashes I will rise reborn, beautiful and terrible, a phoenix wearing a crown of melted bones." The throne seemed to laugh with him, iron barbs catching lamplight like grinning teeth. Rhaegar sensed knights of the Kingsguard entering behind him. Arthur Dayne, Prince Lewin, Oswell Went, each drawn by oaths and dread. Time slowed to a blade's whisper. Rhaegar's gauntlet flexed around his sword hilt. He thought of black petals drifting over Lyanna's hair, of Elias' quiet strength, of the babe Aegon gurgling in his cradle. He thought of the thousands outside these walls, small folk who would never know prophecy yet deserved life. And he moved. Dawn flashed in Arthur's grasp. As Lucerys turned, the sword of the morning carved a clean arc, severing the pyromancer's arm. The sphere clattered, skittered, but did not shatter. Rhaegar lunged, seizing his father's wrist before he could hurl his globe. Aerys screamed, a ragged sound like tearing parchment. Spittle flying. "Traitor, usurper." The struggling orb slipped from his grasp. Rhaegar caught it between both palms, feeling the glass sweat cold, the wildfire within pulsing like a heart. He forced himself not to tremble. "Father, listen," he pleaded. "Release this madness. Let me heal what fear has broken." Madness glared back through milky eyes. "I am the dragon. Fire obeys me." Aerys clawed at his son's face, nails scoring skin. Rhaegar pressed forward, using weight rather than blade, pinning the king to iron wrought from conquered swords. Arthur Dayne set boot upon Lucerys' severed arm, crushing fingers around a second globe until glass splintered and green ichor hissed harmlessly across marble. Sir Lewin held back gold cloaks, voice ringing with princely authority. "Stand down in the name of your true king." At last, Rhaegar wrenched the sphere from Aerys' grasp. He stepped back, chest heaving. The king sagged atop his throne, hair matted, breath rasping. "Take it," Aerys whispered suddenly, voice gentled with eerie clarity. "Take the crown if you dare, but know the realm will devour you. They will name you Kinslayer. They will name you usurper. They will name you Dragon Babe." Rhaegar weighed those words, the bitter prophecy of a broken man. Then he turned, ignoring the blood seeping from scratches across his cheek. "Escort the king to Maegor's Holdfast," he ordered. "He is to be confined under guard, cared for with dignity. None may visit save myself, the queen, and the Grand Maester." Nixauskund. Silence followed. Finally, Arthur knelt. "As you command, your grace." The honorific no longer rang accidental. It settled upon the hall like the first stroke of dawn after endless night. Smoke still lingered next morning above the winged bridge, where pyromancers had been put to sword or sell. Rhaegar stood upon the battlements overlooking the city that now rested in uneasy calm. Bells tolled in the Sept of Baelor, announcing a royal decree. Prince Rhaegar Targaryen named protector of the realm, and Prince Regent until such time as King Aerys's health returned. Word spread swift, but whispers multiplied swifter. Was the Mad King deposed, murdered, or merely hidden away? Rhaegar dispatched criers proclaiming clemency for any lord who bent knee within a fortnight, punishment only for those who raised banners anew. Ships filled with Dornish oranges and arbor wine docked beneath waving dragon pennants. Coin returned to the streets, though many clutched purses tight. Yet shadows grew thick, despite summer sun. Tywin Lannister arrived 3 days hence, golden armor gleaming. He knelt before the Iron Throne, though Rhaegar sat upon the steps rather than the seat, and pledged House Lannister's swords, but his eyes glittered with appraising fire. Varys the eunuch fluttered in from secret holes, canary bright, whispering of northern hosts massing at Moat Cailin. And across the narrow sea, exiled sellswords who once served bitter steel, sniffed rumors of Targaryen uncertainty. Still, in the Red Keep's nursery, Elia cradled Rhaenys, and Aegon practiced striking wooden knights painted in Baratheon yellow. Rhaegar watched them with quiet awe. He played harp strings in the solar some evenings, notes drifting through domed halls like soothing winds. In those moments, peace seemed almost believable. Almost. For each night, when torches flickered low, Rhaegar read missives smuggled from the Dornish marches. Lyanna's confinement progressed. A son quickened within her, stubborn and strong. Joy warred with unease. When word reached Winterfell that Lyanna lived, Ned Stark would ride through wall and flame to reclaim her. If Rhaegar offered a royal betrothal to mend hearts, would northern pride accept? Or would Ned spill blood for stolen honor? The realm tottered on a dagger's edge, and prophecy still whispered of ice and fire intertwined. On the 5th night, after the king's confinement, Rhaegar finally descended the damp stairs to Arya's cell. 2 Kingsguard flanked the iron-bound door. Inside, torchlight painted long bars across stone. Aerys sat at a small table, hair brushed, robes of midnight blue draped over frail shoulders. He raised his gaze as his son entered, lucid, almost serene. "Have you come to end it?" he asked. "I've come to speak," Rhaegar answered, taking the lone opposite chair. He placed a lidded flagon of sweet arbor gold between them, poured into 2 cups. Aerys sniffed suspiciously, but drank. For a time they spoke of shallow things. Weather, the last tourneys, the taste of wine grown in summer's peak. But under each exchange pulsed deeper currents. Rhaegar studied his father's eyes and saw not merely madness, but fear. Fear of prophecy unfulfilled, fear of children stronger than their makers, fear of a realm that had grown beyond his grasp. "I tried to be the dragon they needed," Aerys murmured at last, voice like dead leaves. "Dragons rule by fire and terror. Yet they loved you, not me. Fire is lonely, Rhaegar. You will learn." Rhaegar closed his eyes. "I will not rule by fear alone. I will rule by justice." "Justice." Aerys chuckled, quiet and unkind. "A coin with 2 faces, each sharp as a sword. May it cut clean." When Rhaegar left, torchlight glinting off damp stone, his father's laughter followed him, thin as cobwebs yet clinging. As summer deepened, messages from Moat Cailin grew urgent. Ned Stark had reached the neck with an army, banners of the direwolf joined by Aaron's falcon. They demanded audience, safe passage to King's Landing to negotiate Lyanna's release and the fate of the realm. Rhaegar deliberated. To refuse was to invite siege. To accept risked daggers at court. He chose the path of courage. On a warm dawn, the northern host approached Flea Bottom's dusty outer market. Shields bore chips from travel. Horses bore flecks of salt, dried by briny spray. Rhaegar rode out flanked by Dane and Selmy, dragon banners snapping overhead. The prince and the wolf met on neutral road, halting a stone's throw apart. Silence stretched like taut bowstring. Ned Stark dismounted first, armored in plain gray plate, great cloak lined with direwolf fur despite the heat. His face, young yet weathered by grief, regarded Rhaegar with eyes the color of storm-tossed steel. He drew no blade. Instead, he removed a letter sealed in black wax, holding it forth. Rhaegar accepted, broke the seal, and read. When he finished, his gaze lifted, and Ned's voice met it. "Lyanna, he said. "Her child comes too soon. Send maesters, or send her home." A tremor rattled Rhaegar's composure. He motioned Arthur Dayne forward. "Ride at once," he ordered. "Take the swiftest Garin from the royal stables. Bring Willa, the midwife, and every tonic for bleeding." Dayne bowed and spurred away. Rhaegar faced Ned. "You have my oath. Lyanna will have every healer in Westeros if need be. And you will have my life in payment, should I fail." "Now when?" Ned studied him. Sweat glistened at his temples, though his voice remained calm. "A brother's oath binds more deeply than crowns. See that you keep yours, and perhaps we will not drown the South in winter wrath." Rhaegar inclined his head. "Ride with me to the city. Bring those you trust. We will speak under guest right." He extended a hand. After a heartbeat that felt as long as a lifetime, Ned clasped it. Fingers closed, sealing an accord that might save or doom a kingdom. Within the Red Keep's Godswood, where tall oaks cast dancing patterns upon moss, Ned Stark knelt before a heart tree transplanted from storms and generations earlier. White bark flaked like brittle snow, red sap weeping from eyes carved long before dragons came. Rhaegar observed from a respectful distance, memories of songs stirring. When Ned rose, he gestured toward stone benches beneath bowers heavy with purple blossoms. "I grew up in Winterfell listening to tales of Aegon's conquest," Ned said, voice low. "Brandon called them songs for singers. I thought them warnings of dragonfire." "Nan, songs and warnings are seldom far apart," said Rhaegar. They spoke past midday. Rhaegar confessed truths he had kept from even Elia. Dreams of a prince who was promised, visions of darkness descending from the land of always winter, the necessity of a marriage that bound ice to fire. He told how Lyanna's courage and enigmatic laughter captured both heart and prophecy, how he never meant to spark war, only to shield the child who might save them all. Ned listened, expression carved in stone yet eyes flickering. When silence fell, Ned's voice emerged husky. "If Lyanna dies, prophecy dies. Are you prepared to stake your realm on the life of a girl you took against her family's will?" "No," Rhaegar said. "I am prepared to stake my life that she lives. The realm I will mend with mercy and law." "Mercy for whom?" Ned demanded. "For lords who butchered innocents at Duskendale? For knights who torched villages? I have seen too many pyres in this war to trust mere words." Rhaegar rose. "Then judge me by deeds." He extended a sealed parchment. A proclamation pardoning all who lay down arms. Restitution funded by the royal coffers to rebuild burned towns. And the restoration of Brandon and Rickard Stark's titles posthumously, clearing their names of treason. Ned accepted the parchment without opening it. Still, suspicion lingered like hoarfrost. And Lyanna? Protected, honored, free to choose her path. If she wishes to return to Winterfell, she will go with my escort and blessing. Ned's shoulders sagged as if he had carried mountains too long. "Swear it before gods and men." Rhaegar drew his father's dagger, steel, not Valyrian, and cut his palm. Blood welled. He clasped Ned's forearm. "Before the old gods and the new I so swear." Red drops fell upon heart tree roots like seeds watered by sacrifice. Across the seas, Ironborn reavers pillaged the fingers while Balon Greyjoy weighed rebellion. In the Reach, Mace Tyrell prepared grandiose feasts to celebrate royal victory, but hoarded grain against famine. On Dragonstone, ravens brought word of a red comet blazing across eastern skies. "Omen of dragons reborn," said some sailors. Others muttered of doom. And at the edge of desert wastes, Dothraki Khalasars gathered, whispering of western kingdoms ripe for burning. Yet all those shadows felt distant flickers compared to the single chamber where Lyanna Stark labored beneath flickering torchlight. Stone walls of the Tower of Joy swallowed her cries. Arthur Dayne held the door with sword unsheathed, denying entry to all save midwives and the old maester from Sunspear. Sweat drenched Rhaegar's brow as he paced outside, counting breaths that refused steady rhythm. In distant memory, he had sung ballads of love as everlasting bloom. Now he tasted love's fearsome thorns. When the door finally creaked, snow and sand seemed to swirl within the dim hall, meeting in storm. A wizened maester emerged, spectacles fogged. "A son, my prince," he said. "And the lady lives, though her strength wanes. She asks for you." Rhaegar pushed past him into lamplight, smelling of blood and lavender. Lyanna lay upon fresh linens, skin pale as frost-kissed petals, but her gaze burned bright. In her arms rested a tiny bundle swaddled in midnight blue. She smiled, faint but fierce. "I feared I would die before seeing your face again," she whispered. "I would have torn the realm apart to see it," Rhaegar replied, voice breaking. He knelt, brushing damp hair from her brow, pressing his lips to her fevered skin. The child stirred, small fist escaping blankets. Rhaegar touched those tiny fingers, marveling. "A name," Lyanna said. "We spoke of many." "Yes." Rhaegar glanced at the babe's curious violet eyes. "Jaehaerys, perhaps, for peace. Or Jon." Lyanna's lips curved. "Jon," she repeated, a soft echo of her brother's. "Jon of ice and fire." Rhaegar smiled, the words settling upon him like dawn's first warmth. He looked to the doorway where Arthur Dayne stood, dawnlight glinting from his blade, snow melting in southern air. "Tell the realm," Rhaegar called, voice growing stronger, filling the tower's stones with promise. "A new prince is born. Tell them hope has a name." "No?" Arthur nodded, eyes wet with fierce joy, and stepped into sunlit courtyard where ravens awaited flight. Wind carried their beating wings over desert and river, over castle and field, across kingdoms weary of war, bearing tidings of life. In the months that followed, life sprouted amid the ashes of conflict. Farmers replanted scorched fields with seed gifted by Highgarden. Fishermen cast nets under banners that promised safe waters from the red wine fleet. In the north, Ned Stark carried tidings of his sister's recovery and the new prince to Winterfell's hearth. The old gods heard his prayers and whispered of cautious hope. Yet peace seldom walks lightly in Westeros. Tywin Lannister pressed for marriage alliances. Cersei to Prince Aegon, Jaime to Lady Rhaenys' eventual handmaiden. Schemes coiled like adders beneath lion furs. Balon Greyjoy's longships vanished beyond the Sunset Sea, rumored to seek dragons' tombs in Old Valyria. And in the free cities, magisters scoured dusty volumes for hints of dragon eggs waking beneath Comet's glare, intent on wielding them against a realm still healing. Within King's Landing, Rhaegar ruled from the solar, rather than the Iron Throne, preferring sunlight to shadows. Aelia stood often at his side, health flickering like candle flame, yet will unbowed. Lyanna, when strong enough, traveled from Dorne to Dragonstone, choosing seclusion over courtly glare. The realm whispered of two queens, though Rhaegar named only one. Some septons condemned, others hailed his honesty, citing Maegor's precedents. The faith militant remained dormant, however, as coins for sept restorations flowed from royal coffers. All the while, Rhaegar's dreams persisted. Visions of snow-covered battlefields where shadows with bright blue eyes marched beneath storms. He doubled the Night's Watch stipend, sent blacksmiths north with steel, and urged Maester Aemon to speak with archmaesters of Old Town about ancient magics gone stagnant. Few listened, fewer believed. One autumn eve, as leaves blushed gold, pirouetted in the courtyard, Ned Stark arrived unannounced with but a handful of guards. Rhaegar greeted him at the stables, hay dust shimmering in torchlight. "You ride lightly," Rhaegar observed. "Have you returned for counsel?" Ned dismounted, face grave. For truth. He produced a black iron dagger chased with bronze runes, caught in the hand of a dead wildling beyond the wall. Its edge never dulls. Its metal drinks warmth. "The old bear thinks it the work of sorcery." He met Rhaegar's eyes. "My brother Benjen said, 'The dead walk in shadows.'" Rhaegar turned the blade under torch glow. Frost formed along its edge, white breath curling despite autumn warmth. Suddenly, prophecy's every whisper seemed thunderously real. He closed fingers around the bitter cold. "Then winter truly comes," he murmured. And with it, war none of us can imagine, Ned said. Rhaegar inhaled, feeling the path before him stretch into endless dark. Yet within his chest, beneath scars and doubt, a new fire burned. Fire not of destruction, but of life staked against oblivion. He thought of Jon, tiny fists grasping at sunbeams in Dragonstone's nursery. He thought Aegon dreamwalking halls, with wooden sword raised. He thought of Rhaenys singing in Valyrian, her voice a dragon's lullaby. "We will imagine it," Rhaegar said at last, resolve ringing like dawn's steel. "And we will meet it, united." Ned inclined his head. "Then let this be the first step." He surrendered the dagger. "The North stands ready." Rhaegar clasped the direwolf's arm once more, feeling the bite of cold metal between them and the burgeoning heat of shared purpose. In that circle of torchlight, amid the smell of horses and falling leaves, an alliance older than crowns forged anew. Ice and fire melding, not in strife but in hope. Far overhead, a single star flared bright against the night's velvet vault, its tail dragging crimson across the heavens. Small folk pointed upward, gasping at the omen. Some called it Dragon's Breath. Others, the Sword of Heroes yet to come. In his solar, Rhaegar raised quill to parchment and began a letter addressed to his infant son. "Know that the world you inherit was purchased by love and tempered by mercy. Know that every soul is a song, and we are the singers. When cold darkness rises, let your heart burn bright. For you are the prince that was promised, born of ice and fire." He paused, listening to the hush of the keep, feeling the great wheel of time turning slow, inexorable. Outside his window, the star burned on, unwavering. With steady hand, Rhaegar wrote on, weaving words that might guide a realm for ages. Each stroke a promise that the dynasty he had salvaged from ruin would stand not upon terror, but upon the fragile, unyielding strength of human hope. And somewhere in the depths of the Red Keep, deep beneath stone where kings once whispered to their fears, a man called Aerys the Targaryen dreamed of fire that no longer obeyed him, and wept. Now and say. A velvet soft dusk bled across the rooftops of King's Landing. Duskward clouds banked like bruises over the throat, and spires of the great sept flushed rose in the fading light. In the Red Keep's highest garden, acolyte lanterns guttered one by one, while jasmine heavy with summer's waning perfume coiled around marble balustrades. Prince Rhaegar lingered there, a lone silhouette against the sky, the aged harp cradled in his arms humming under nimble fingers. He played softly, not concert or command performance, but half-voiced musings meant only for the creeping night. Fragile chords that wove together the names of his children, his queens, and the uncertain realm stretching beyond the city walls. Below him the fortress breathed. Clatter of hooves in outer courts, the low murmur of washerwomen in adjoining terraces, rhythmic thud of Dornish guards drilling in the sand ring gifted to them after the Trident. These noises formed a kind of heartbeat, steady if imperfect, and Rhaegar found comfort in it, even while worry gnawed behind his eyes. Each day since Lyanna's childbirth had layered new complexities atop old wounds. Rumor thick as flies in midsummer, petitions piled knee-high outside the solar, and lords whose smiles shone bright as polished bronze, yet rang hollow when tapped. He brushed a final harmony, let it fade, and turned. Footsteps approached, measured, and when Arthur Dayne stepped into the dim lamplight, Rhaegar felt a subtle easing within his chest. Dayne's white cloak, freshly laundered, still bore a faint pink hue where dried wildfire solution had refused to wash clean. The sword of the morning wore the blemish as penance and warning both. "Your Grace," Arthur said, bowing the merest fraction. "The Queen sends word the babe will not sleep without his father's song." Rhaegar allowed himself a soft chuckle. Aegon always needed lullaby more than arms drill. He tapped harpwood. And young Prince Jon perhaps follows his brother's example. "If your Grace does not object, I'll escort you to the nursery." They walked together through ivy-hung colonnades. Below, the lights of Fleabottom winked alive. Candle vendors hawked illusions of starlight to small folk who could not see the heavens for soot. The smell of stewed onions drifted through arrow loops, but soon yielded to fresher currents perfumed by the lemon trees that Elia insisted be replanted after the siege. Rhaegar lifted a hand, absently brushing a leaf as they passed, and felt dew gather at his fingertips. At the nursery door, Dane paused. A change swept his calm features, something between apology and forewarning. "Prince Viserys waits within," he said. "Hey," demanded audience. "Let him," Rhaegar replied. "He is blood and deserves truth, no matter how his temper frays." He pushed inside. The nursery glowed with lamplight tinted soft pink by gauzy drapes. Elia sat upon a cushioned settle, raiment of Myrish lace pooling like foamed wine at her feet. Rhaenys curled in her lap half asleep. Lyanna, in a straight-backed chair, rocked the swaddled infant Jon, humming a northern cradle song whose cadence rose and broke like distant surf on pebble shores. And pacing at the far windows, silver hair disheveled and eyes bright as bent coins, strode Viserys. He halted mid-stride when Rhaegar entered. "Brother, I have waited an hour. Then another minute will not kill you, Viserys." Rhaegar set the harp beside a low chest and crossed to the cradle where Aegon sprawled, chubby arms flung wide as if to embrace an invisible sky. He laid a feather touch on the boy's brow. The child stirred but did not wake. Satisfied, Rhaegar turned. Viserys swallowed his ire, though it trembled still in the twitch of his jaw. "The court whispers I am no longer heir presumptive. They call me the Spare's Spare, a relic." "Court whispers with or without reason," Elia murmured, stroking Rhaenys' dark hair. Lyanna's humming ceased. She watched warily, but said nothing. Rhaegar met Viserys' glare head-on. "Titles shift like tides. You remain a prince of the realm, and you carry our father's legacy. No one here would deny you that dignity." "Damned shall." "Dignity?" Viserys' voice cracked like glass. They snickered behind sleeves. "Say a bastard of ice displaces me. They dub you bigamist. They call the royal line uncertain, because dragons roost in two women's beds." Lyanna stiffened. Elia's fingers paused their soothing. Rhaegar's expression cooled. "Mind your words, brother. You are speaking near children and women who risked life for this family." Viserys' cheeks colored, but he forged on, desperate flame behind his eyes. "Our house wields dragons or we are nothing. You taught me that. So show them. Hatch eggs. Summon flame. Put me astride a worm so the lords forget they ever doubted. That been wine to see." Rhaegar exhaled. "There are no living dragons to ride." "Then find them." Viserys slammed a fist against the window jamb. Glass rattled. "Across the seas they say the Red Star heralds dragon birth. Seek the eggs rumored in Ashai, the smoking wastes, the ruins of Valyria. Send an expedition. Let me lead it." A wine goblet trembled on a sideboard. Lyanna rose, adjusting Jon's blankets, and crossed to stand beside Rhaegar in quiet solidarity. The child's violet-flecked eyes peered from the swaddle, calm, as if waiting judgment. "It is tempting to chase legends," Rhaegar said gently, "but the realm's wounds remain open. I need trusted princes at home, not chasing phantoms into darkness. When the realm heals, perhaps then." Viserys ground teeth. "Always later. Always caution. You were not cautious at Harrenhal." A tight silence. Rhaegar felt the old tourney's echo, the rebellion spark. He stepped forward, placed both hands on Viserys' shoulders. "I promise you this. Your place in the line of succession will be honored. I will sign a public decree tomorrow. But power is not proven by threat alone. It is proven by patience, by serving. Will you serve? Or will you follow father's path into fire?" "Nine." The younger prince's gaze flickered. For an instant, Rhaegar glimpsed the frightened boy beneath arrogance. The child who once clutched his hand while Eris raved. Viserys' shoulders sagged. "I will serve," he whispered, and the fight leaked from him. Rhaegar embraced him, and Viserys clung like driftwood in rough surf. Over his shoulder, Rhaegar saw Lyanna's tight nod and Elia's small smile. When Viserys withdrew, Rhaegar motioned to Arthur Dayne, still watchful at the doorway. "Sir, escort the prince to his chambers. Offer him the maester's draft." He needs rest. Viserys opened his mouth to protest, then shut it, and followed Dane out. Boots scuffing. Only when the door shut did Rhaegar allow tension to melt from his spine. He reached for the harp again, plucked a chord. Elia lifted her brows. "Play the Dornishman's Wife," she said, teasing gentle, but slow, lest the babes wake and demand to dance. He complied, filling the room with mellow strings. Lyanna swayed. Jon pressed to her breast, and in that fragile hush the future felt unassailably bright. If only for the span of a lullaby. The brightness dimmed the next morning with the arrival of a raven from Lannisport. Its scroll, pinned in Tywin Lannister's precise hand, carried news of troubling import. A merchant cog bound from Old Town to Gulltown had been boarded in the Straits of Fair Isle by Ironborn. The crew slaughtered, cargo stolen. Worse, the cog bore crates of treated weirwood destined for the reconstruction of holdfasts burned during the rebellion. A royal chartered shipment. It was an act of blatant piracy against crown property, one Tywin avowed could not stand. He offered Lannister galleys and coin to mount punitive strikes on the Iron Islands, provided the crown grant him authority to lead. Rhaegar read the letter thrice. The Kingsguard assembled in council that afternoon. Selmy, Dane, Luwin, Went, and Gerald Hightower now returned from Old Town, where he had sworn renewed fealty to the Prince Regent. Also present were Jon Connington, Grand Maester Pycelle, Varys, Lord Commander Rain, of the City Watch, and at Rhaegar's request, Eddard Stark died. "The lion senses opportunity," Connington said, leaning back with the careless ease of an old campaigner. "Strip the Kraken's claws, claim salt silver, parade home a victor, and he'll sit that iron throne with one foot, though he needs a stool to reach." Pycelle tugged beard rings. Yet piracy cannot be ignored. Merchants multiply grievances in the Commons Court. Treasury coffers shrink with every lost cargo. Ned drummed calloused fingers on the table. Ironborn, raid by nature. If you smash their fleet, they bleed but grow back like hydra heads. Better bind them with promise of trade and cultural exchange. Old Nuncle Roderick Harlaw learned to prize books over axes. Such minds can temper their own. "Then Dante," Connington snorted. "The Northman suggests gifting violins to wolves." "Wolves may learn melody before lions learn humility," Ned returned, calm but edged. Rhaegar raised a hand. "Enough parry. We must weigh Lannister eagerness. Granting Tywin command risks his star waxing too bright. Yet ignoring this incursion invites further plunder and erodes faith in my regency." Varys' smile glimmered. "Might I propose an alternate champion? One equally keen on renown, yet less apt to overshadow the crown." Eyes swung his way. The spy master spread delicate fingers. "Lord Stannis Baratheon." A hush. Rhaegar considered. Robert's younger brother had withdrawn to Storm's End since the Trident, seldom embroidered by rumor save for relentless governance over shoals and salt quarry. He was stern, proud, but unflinchingly loyal to rule of law. If loyalty could be earned. Storm's End lost much at the Trident, Rhaegar mused. Their lord slain. Appointing Stannis might heal that wound, and remind the realm the crown bears no ill will toward House Baratheon. "Etirum, sir." Selmy nodded slowly. "Stannis will prosecute the war with vigor. He will not turn conquest into personal fief." "And Tywin?" Arthur asked. "I will invite the hand to supply coin and provisions," Rhaegar decided. His pride acknowledged, his claws sheathed. Connington chuckled. "A lion feeding the stag so the stag may headbutt krakens. I'll wager the islands sink under the weight of their confusion." "Manton." Decision settled. Rhaegar drafted letters. One commanding Stannis to ready the royal flotilla anchored at Blackwater Bay. Another thanking Tywin for his zeal and requesting Lannister loans to finance sailcloth and shipwright wages. The chessboard shifted subtly. Watching the quills scratch, Varys' gaze flickered with approval. Later, in the corridor, Ned caught Rhaegar's sleeve. "Stannis will insist on lawful justification. Dispatch me to Storm's End with the royal warrant. My presence may temper suspicion the crown wields him against his own kin's memory." "And you saw." Rhaegar clasped Ned's arm. "I would value your counsel on the voyage, but the realm yet needs your northern voice and counsel. Still, if you wish—" "I wish. Idle hands churn old grief. Let me earn tomorrow." Ned's gray eyes held steady light. Rhaegar inclined his head. That evening Rhaegar paid another visit to his father's cell. Torches guttered along the narrow stairs, oil smell thick as regret. The king's guard at the door, Oswell went this time, looked uneasy, as though he had listened too long to Aerys' fading murmurs. Inside, lamplight made pallid scrolls of the king's cheeks. Aerys sat hunched, carving shapes into table wood with a small knife left intentionally blunted by Maester Pycelle. He did not look up. "Father," Rhaegar greeted. "You smell of parchment," Aerys said. "Ink and chains. I come to speak law. I intend to pass your seal upon a decree naming our half-brother Viserys Prince of Summerhall, with incomes from its lands." He frets over his place. "Vanderbamsel." Aerys scraped the knife. Shavings drifted like snow. "The boy is flicker flame. He will ignite everything to feel warm. Warmth we can give without fire." Rhaegar slid a rolled parchment across. "If you sign, the realm recognizes your authority continues. It would hearten those who fear your abdication." At last, Aerys lifted hollow eyes. "And would you have me sign a peace decree for the Ironborn? Those who steal my wood and salt my seas? I will soon, yes." A twisted smile. "No, dull. Let the seas flame. I dreamt of oil-slick melting krakens. Beautiful. In. Father. Sing, Rhaegar. Sing the song that opened Harrenhal's doom." "I sang of love. And birthed war," Aerys hissed. "Do not feign innocence." He jabbed a blunt knife against his own palm. A bead of blood welled. "All is paid in blood, son. You will learn." Rhaegar reached to still the hand. Aerys retracted, cackling. "Leave me. Better yet, bring your northern wolf girl. Let me hear her howl. Wolves burn nice." Rhaegar's stomach knotted, but he kept voice calm. "Heal, father. The realm still has need of your wisdom." He gathered the unsigned roll and left, Aerys' laughter snapping at his heels like sparks in dry grass. Outside, he inhaled cooler air, heart pounding. How often would he walk these stairs before accepting his father's recovery would never come? Duty demanded hope. Reality whispered mercy. He could not yet envision finality. Nor would he condemn his father's soul to kinslaying while any piece of the man he remembered clung within. Far to the north, along ragged coast, washed by gray swells, Castle Black greeted dawn with a brittle hush. Snow powdered the wall, though autumn had weeks yet. A sour omen that set Lord Commander Jorah Mormont muttering as he and Benjen Stark studied the ancient gate. New recruits from the south just arrived. Thin, shivering boys from barley fields and jail cells alike. Their chatter stilled when ravens erupted from the rookery, croaking frantic as they winged south. One black-feathered message bore a wax seal bright red with the three-headed dragon. Benjen's brows rose. Nothing from Winterfell in 3 weeks, but the crown sends birds near daily. What hope the south cares for our petty nightmares? Benramshun. Mormont broke the seal with thumb, squinting. Prince Regent commands we compile a full report on all unexplained deaths, wildling movements, odd weather. He doubles our grain supplies, promises new wool if we answer swift. Benjen blew frost from gloves. That's more than we've had from King's Landing in 50 years. Maybe this Targaryen lad sees storms on the horizon. Jorah looked to the forbidding tree line beyond the wall. I hope he's quick about it. The next evening, a ranging party returned, bearing between them a burlap-wrapped object. Benjen helped lift it onto the Bailey stones. When the cloth peeled back, every man stepped away. A human head, mouth fixed in grin too wide. Eyes milk white, skin frost blue, yet seared by what looked like flame. Beneath the throat, the neck ended in melted black crust, as if fire and ice warred there at removal. Mormont cursed. Another charred white. Southron lords won't dismiss this one as freezing rot. He signaled to the Septon to prepare a pyre. Benjen, copy every detail. We'll send the prince his real nightmare." Vengeance swallowed the bile rising. The northern wind moaned along the parapets, carrying with it distant howls. Winter would not wait for politic. In King's Landing, early frost nipped vine leaves. The city's mornings grew vibrant with chatter about the coming royal wedding, not Rhaegar's but Lord Harold Arryn to Lady Marguerite Tyrell, a match brokered by Littlefinger on the pretext of stitching the veil and reach into new alliance. Rhaegar approved, suspecting Tywin had been outflanked before he could present Cersei as bride to Arryn. The realm's tapestry grew intricate, each thread hummed with possibility. One crisp dawn Rhaegar joined Elia in the rookery, where she delighted in teaching Rhaenys the names of ravens. The 3-year-old squealed enthralled each time a bird flapped heavy wings. A fresh raven fluttered in, leg scroll sealed in black wax. Elia took it and gasped. "Look." Rhaegar read. "Lake of Myr with sails ablaze. Surviving crew says, green fire from unknown galleys. Sigil uncertain. Hull's black glass. Merchantmen vanish along Corthroot Data. Could these be dragons?" It came from Sir Willem Darry, long loyal custodian of Targaryen interests in Bravostadi. Rhaegar frowned. "Black glass hulls. Wildfire at sea? Corth lies east of Valyria. Something stirs beyond our maps." Elia pressed knuckles to lips. "You think this tied to the Red Star?" "Perhaps." Rhaegar beckoned Maester Garrides to dispatch ravens, requesting more intelligence. "We cannot chase every phantom, yet we must not ignore the horizon," Toctenheim. Later that day, while small council wrangled over grain tariffs, Pycelle delivered a sealed parchment with the wax still warm. It bore the tower sigil of Old Town's citadel. Rhaegar excused himself to read. Archmaester Vaegun has validated traces of dragonglass in obsidian shards found near Hardhome. Unprecedented quantity. Suggest royal expedition to secure. Rumors wildlings fashion weapons from substance. Rhaegar exhaled. 2 omens in one day. He summoned Lowen Martell. Ready a royal messenger to Castle Black. Offer the watch a stipend for every pound of dragonglass mined and transported south. And send a craftsman north to demonstrate forging into arrowheads. No. Lewin saluted. "Some will decry waste of coin on ghost stories, Your Grace." "Let them." Rhaegar's voice steeled. "When ghost stories march south, I intend the living to hold blades." In the marble-walled sept of Shannala, Rhaella Targaryen knelt in prayer. Candles burned in silent rows, their wax tears glimmering. The Queen Mother's hair had grown whiter still, her face pale but serene. She prayed for her husband's soul, though he raved at her presence. For her children's hearts, though they drifted separate constellations. And for the babe she felt quickening within her, though maesters whispered worries about her age. When the prayer ended, she found Lyanna waiting outside, wearing a travel cloak of dark green trimmed with gray fur. Northern hues adapted for southern breeze. Their gaze locked, wary then warming into hesitant accord. Lyanna offered a short bow. "Your Grace." "Walk with me," Rhaella said, linking arms. They paced slow, along a pillared walkway, overlooking the city, gulls diving near the harbor. "You journey to Dragonstone soon?" Rhaella asked. "Tomorrow, if winds favor," Lyanna answered. "The Maester says Jon fares better with sea air, and I wish quiet." "You fear the whispers." Lyanna's jaw tightened. "They call me usurper's whore. Your love for Elia remains bright. I would not dim it." Rhaella squeezed her hand. "Love multiplies, child. It does not divide. I have lain beside a dragon amid madness. I know what divides. Peace is precious." She glanced at Lyanna's profile, saw the streak of stubborn honor etched there. "Your loyalty to my son will save more lives than our banners ever could." Lyanna absorbed the words, cheeks coloring. "Thank you." They paused at an archway where acolytes trimmed creeping vines. From above the city bell towers, a hawk circled, shadow sliding over tiled roofs. Rhaella spoke on. "Know also that prophecy seldom chooses ease. Rhaegar is both gifted and burdened by visions. Walk with him, even when path grows thorned. And guard his kindness, it is rarer than Valyrian steel. Damni. Lyanna tilted her head. Will you counsel him if he must choose between blood and mercy? I pray he will not face that choice, Rhaella murmured. Yet her gaze drifted eastward along the coast where summer storms brewed, blue-black and sharp, with unseen lightning. At storm's end, a salty gale whipped flying buttresses and made banners crack like thunder. Eddard Stark rode through the ancient Gullet Gate preceded by the royal herald, bearing Rhaegar's silver three-headed dragon, quartered with the crowned stag. Lord Stannis waited in the courtyard, flanked by knights in new gold and black surcoats, his subtle nod to both Baratheon wrath and royal favor. Stannis' jaw looked carved from granite, his eyes impersonal as scale weights. Lord Stark, Stannis greeted, inclining just enough to honor a great lord yet maintain his own pride. Welcome to Storm's End. Thank you, Lord Stannis. Your castle stands strong as ever. Stands because we refuse to yield to treason, Stannis corrected. Face a mask, though pain flickered in his eyes at mention of Robert. Come, we will speak privately. Now. In the round solar, they pored over nautical charts, the evening tide banging against sea gates below like fists of 100 angry giants. Ned outlined the Crown's charge: free ships to hunt Ironborn raiders, restore trade lanes, and if feasible negotiate lasting ceasefire. Stannis listened, fingers drumming the carved map table. Ironborn do not parley, they pray. I have no love for needless bloodshed, Lord Stark, but they must be broken. I will do it lawfully. Warrants of reprisal, hostages for good conduct, censure from High Septon if they resist. Ned, you will have winter storms soon, Ned warned. Sailors fear the drowned god far less than rotting timbers. Then we sail swift. Later, as moonlight silvered the ramparts, Ned found Stannis alone before a brazier, gazing into coals. My brother laughed more loudly than he listened, Stannis said without turning. Yet his heart beat strong. Could you have saved him, Lord Stark? You grew with him. Ned's breath clouded. No, Totting. The path Robert chose left little room for counsel. Now? Then perhaps I saved the realm, as apology for failing him. Ned touched Stannis' shoulder. And I will stand with you. In the Iron Islands, Pike's crumbling towers rose like jagged teeth. Storms hurled waves so high gulls rode them inland. Balon Greyjoy held court in the sea-stone chair. Daughters Asha and Yara at his right. Priests of the drowned god chanting salt prayers. A dozen reavers knelt, presenting loot from their latest raid: weirwood boxes, vellum scroll tubes, casks of arbor wine that sloshed as they hit stone. Balon's smile was a knife. The Greenlands grow fat. We carve them lean. Asha, sharp-eyed, harder than her 18 years, leaned forward. Father, you tread dangerous tide. The dragons prepare fleet under Baratheon banner. Their sails will shadow our shores. Let them. Balon waved a dismissive hand. Ironborn hoist no banners to kneel. Stannis will learn iron's price. But in a shadowed alcove, Aeron Damfair, preacher and prophet, watched lightning realize across the window's slit. He whispered to saltwater ghosts that the red star in the east foretold old gods rising, and that true iron men must sink or swim with storms of fire. When another bolt lanced sky, illuminating the sea-stone chair's oily black surface, Aeron thought he saw a glimmer of scaled patterns, dragon hide reflected in living rock. As seasons edged toward winter's mouth, the Red Keep hosted feasts near weekly to reassure wealthy merchants that grain quotas would meet need. Musicians thrummed ballads while jugglers twirled torches that spat harmless green sparks, a novelty enjoyed by the children. Yet each flare made Rhaegar's spine stiffen with memory of wildfires. Hungry roar. He balanced diplomacy with fatherhood, slipping away from long banquets to cradle Jon, or listened to Rhaenys recount dreams of riding silver cats across moonbeams. One twilight he found Elia alone in the library, candlebox tables yawning in gloom. Scrolls scattered around her. Accounts of heraldry, compendiums on Dornish, northern alliances, dusty tomes on dragon lore. She pressed a palm to her temple. "Tarry not over long," he said softly. "The healer orders rest." Elia looked up, offered tired smile. "I plot genealogies. If we are to present unified front, we must craft precedents. 2 queens may seem scandal, but from Essos to Yeti there are dynasties of multiple consorts. We simply need scholars to declare it normal." "Entamar." He closed distance, brushing knuckles along her cheek. "You do too much." "I must." She took his hand. "Lyanna secludes. Tales fill vacuum. That she is witch enslaving you, that I poison her, that you father bastards in every reach meadow. We must control story before story controls realm." Rhaegar pulled a chair, sat. "Then we write truth. We host winter tourney at Dragonstone. Invite the realm to celebrate Jon's name day. There, I publicly praise both mothers, pledge loyalty, and stage tilts whose prophets rebuild war-torn villages." "Oh." Elia's eyes brightened. "And crown the victor with ice and fire roses." Symbolism they cannot misunderstand. He kissed her palm. "Your mind glitters brighter than any gemstone." Preparations consumed weeks. Master of ships Valerian oversaw refit of gleaming war galleys for the Baratheon-led armada. On banners decked to depart, the crowned stag sailed beside 3-headed dragon. Stannis visited King's Landing for final consultations, stoic in black doublet, but Rhaegar glimpsed steel glimmer of anticipation behind reserved demeanor. In parting, Stannis surprised him with a grudging bow. "You honor the law. I will honor your trust." When the fleet slid down the Blackwater, lanterns bobbed like mirrored constellations on midnight sea. Crowds lining quay cheered until throats raw. Viserys stood among them, chin up, softening as ships vanished into horizon. Rhaegar noted it and allowed himself a flicker of pride in his brother's restraint. Meanwhile, messenger ravens arrived daily from the wall bearing sleeves of observations. Clusters of silent villages beyond the Milkwater. Sighting of giant prints near Frostfangs. Whites that would not burn without dragonfire-steeped pitch. Rhaegar stored each scroll in an oaken chest behind triple lock. When time allowed, he studied ancient maps with Maester Gerardes, tracing routes for potential grain caravans to relieve Night's Watch and refurbish abandoned castles along the wall. Funds barely covered half measures, yet he allocated anyway, telling the Master of Coin the realm paid debt to future itself. Tywin Lannister visited under guise of progress report on loans. He dined with Rhaegar in the solar, overlooking the whispering wood garden. Conversation polite, peppered with compliments on the coming Dragonstone festival, but undertow strong as river current. "At your tourney," Tywin said, carving lamb with surgical precision. "Perhaps a match of the Westerland's champion would please the crowd. My son Jaime remains absent from court service since your father's confinement. An opportunity for his talents may remind all of Kingsguard distinction." "Nah. Rhaegar sipped watered wine. "Sir Jaime's skill is indisputable. Yet until I resolve certain administrative matters, his attendance may prove awkward." Tywin's golden brows arched. "Administrative? Precedence of station," Rhaegar clarified, voice even. "As you know, Sir Jaime swore Kingsguard in the presence of King Aerys. With the king unable to issue counsel, I hesitate to redirect Jaime's duties without his word." "Nadinda." "And you hesitate," Tywin echoed, a ghost of smile on lips. "The realm cannot pause for a single man's convalescence." "Nor can it discard oaths lightly," Rhaegar replied. "When the time proves right, Sir Jaime will serve once more. Until then, I rely on your wisdom as hand to guide Lannister honor." Tywin inclined head, though light behind his eyes hardened. "As you command, your grace." They spoke then of grain, of taxes, of winter projections. Yet each word felt like fencing, blades sheathed in civility. When Tywin departed, Rhaegar watched lion banners ride down the hill. He rubbed the bridge of his nose and murmured, "He will not wait long." On Dragonstone, the small folk whispered that winds smelled different when both Targaryen queens arrived. One on sleek Dornish galley, the other upon a northern cog newly christened Wolfsong. The island's black cliffs welcomed them with gull cries and spindrift. The ancient keep perched like crouching dragon above basalt ridges. Torches lined the causeway. Velvet snapped in briny gale. Inside stone drum's great hall, banners of silver wolves crossed vivid suns. Musicians from Sunspear mingled with Wintertown fiddlers, their instruments weaving surprising harmony. Rhaegar arrived 2 days later on swift war galley, bringing Eris's old crown but refusing to wear it. Instead, he donned a circlet of subtle beaten gold, bearing alternating gemstones, ruby for fire, sapphire for ice. It rested lightly on his brow. Symbol of union, not dominion. Guests flooded in. Lord Mace Tyrell with retinue smelling of orange blossom. Prince Oberyn Martell, whose confident smile stirred gossip. Lord Hoster Tully, aging but bright-eyed. Crow's Nest Lord Caron. Even Lady Mage Mormont representing Bear Island with daughters in tow. Ravens delivered regrets from Balon Greyjoy, stormbound, he claimed, and from Lord Tywin, citing urgent court business. The absences spoke as loudly as horns. First night's feast brimmed with delicacies. Roast swan glazed in honey lemon, Dornish peppers stuffed with goat cheese, northern elk stew thick with barley. Minstrels sang the song of Bael the Bard, followed by a Pentoshi rhapsody praising Rhoynar maidens. Children chased under long tables, knights toasted, wine spilled like dusk's purple tide. Rhaegar rose near midnight, harp slung. Silence rippled out. He began a new composition, strings whisper soft, rising into stirring ode. Words flowed. Born under bleeding star, child of wild winter's roar, fire's breath and shadowed hoar. Hope walks where dragons are. As he played, Lyanna held Jon so the infant could gaze at flickering braziers, his tiny fingers clutching mother's braid. Elias swayed with Rhaenys in her lap, eyes bright. And across the hall, Oberyn's stare lingered on his sister, something unspoken behind fervent expression, admiration riddled by protective iron. When final chord faded, a hush held a heartbeat, then erupted into applause. Tabletops drummed. Even stoic lords of the Vale rose. Rhaegar inclined head. May we remember tonight when winter's wines bite hardest, for in music we hear the realm's many tongues as one. In the galleries, a hooded figure retreated. Hidden beneath dark cowl, Varys noted each cheering face, and each that applauded too late, making mental ledgers of loyalty. Jousting commenced next dawn upon grassy meadow behind Dragonmont. Wind throwing salt spray across tilt-yard boards. The list of champions dazzled. Beric Dondarrion representing Blackhaven. Sir Jorah Mormont leaned from exile service in the east, but returned at Ned's summons. Sir Loras Tyrell, scarcely 15 yet rumored unmatched in practice. Oberyn Martell disclaiming age but riding with spear. And Eddard Stark, entering purely to humor Rhaegar's wish that ice tilt against sun. Viserys insisted on bearing Prince Regent's favor, a twist of red and black silk, tying it to Sir Barristan's lance. The old knight smiled graciously, but withdrew due to healing wound. Instead, Sir Gawain Dane accepted, star sign gleaming purple on cloak. Helms donned, banners waved, trumpets blared, hooves churned up briny grass, and the lists roared alive in thunder of splintering ash. Loras unseated Sir Lyn Corbray with cunning inside feint. Oberyn broke 3 lances against Jorah before the Northmen toppled, yet rose laughing. Ned matched Gawain stroke for stroke until both agreed to forfeit and share a purse. Delighting crowd. Final tilt set Sir Loras against Oberyn. Youthful Rose, ridden by dawn-white courser, faced seasoned Viper on glossy sand steed. They thundered past once, twice, lances shattering each pass. On third charge, Oberyn shifted weight, twisting mid-course. His spear glanced off helm, but his elbow clipped Loras beneath pauldron, legal but harsh. Loras wavered, tried to right, and slammed ground. Gasps rose, then cheers as Oberyn dismounted respectful, helping boy to feet. Rhaegar descended, stand to crown him champion, placing garland of blue winter roses, bound with red lilies about his shoulders. Oberyn bowed low, murmuring, For the union of sun and snow. Feasting resumed. Wine poured. Yet beneath merriment, watchers whispered that Oberyn's display proved Dornishman still unmatched in cunning. Tyrell voice sulked. Mace vowed Loras would train twice daily hence. Deep night, torches guttered. Rhaegar stepped onto terrace overlooking Black Sea, where waves boomed like distant drums. Footsteps behind. Oberyn, still garlanded, bearing 2 cups of chilled wine. A worthy tourney, the Viper said, handing cup. But games distract from heavier matters. Speak plainly. Are you prepared to command armies to the wall? I prepare, yes, Rhaegar answered. But first I must prepare the realm to follow. Oberyn leaned on balustrade, wind riffling his cloak. Prophecy whispers louder than you admit, friend. I glimpsed dragonglass daggers in your armory. I tasted salt in your wine. You expect winter ghosts and flame devils both. Rhaegar met his gaze. Would you think me mad? I've loved mad. Oberyn's grin flashed. Madness makes prophets and fools. Distinction lies in aftermath. He sobered. Know this. Dorne will stand when call comes. Fire once scorched us. We learned to wield heat. Now no sad. They clinked cups. Stars wheeled overhead, comet tail faint but still visible, painting cosmic scar across sky. A week later, on morning of Jon's naming ceremony, storm clouds gathered though no rain fell. In Dragonstone septai, high windows cast shafts of moody light upon assembled lords. 7 oil lamps burned before each crystal altar. Rhaegar stood between Lyanna and Elia, their hands joined above the infant held by Grand Maester Pycelle. The wizened man's voice echoed solemn. Who presents this child before gods and men? Woo! His parents, Lyanna said, voice steady. And I, guardian, Elia added, smile small but proud. Pycelle dipped finger in holy oil, marked babe's brow. Name this soul. Rhaegar's voice rang. Jon Jaehaerys Targaryen, called Jon Snow to the north, prince of the blood royal, born of ice and fire. Chamber murmured. Pycelle lifted child toward flickering window, sunlight catching silver thread woven in swaddle. 7 bless him. Outside bells pealed. On cliffs wild gulls cried answer. And in the crypt wards of Winterfell far north, a direwolf statue seemed to warm under unseen sun, though perhaps it was only lamplight flicker. The celebration ended at dusk. As torches were doused and dragon sleep deepened, a lone skiff scraped Dragonstone's covati. Black-clad figures unloaded crates etched with sigils unknown. They moved silent through basalt tunnels, once used by Valyrian smugglers. Above them, in stone drum, Rhaegar slept with lullabies echoing. At second bell, a sentry spotted movement, arrow notch ready. Too late. A dart hissed, embedding in throat. He crumpled, without sound. The infiltrators climbed stairs to Rookery Tower, bearing small casks sealed in emerald wax. One lifted mask, revealing stern face etched by tide scars. Captain Othar Pike, infamous Ironborn reaver, turned sellsail. Another wore soft-soled slippers of Carthene cut, skin pale as jade. They set casks against stone, pulled lengths of fuse rope treated with amber resin. In the courtyard below, Kingsguard patrolled, but mist veils and moonless sky hid movements. Before fuse could spark, a shadow dropped. A lithe shape in sand-colored cloak. Twin daggers flashed. One infiltrator gurgled. Fell. Captain Othar swung cutlass. Cloak figure darted aside, blade tip skittering on parry. A shrill whistle pierced quiet, guards converged. Torchlight flooded parapet, revealing cloaked defender. Arianne Martell, eldest daughter of Doran, eyes blazing. She spun, cut second attacker behind knee. He toppled. Archers loosed. Up. Arrow struck Othar's thigh. He cursed, knocked crate into parapet. Cask split. Fluid seeped, glimmering iridescent. Wildfire, Arianne shouted. She lunged, seized sputtering fuse, stomped flame. Guards hauled Othar down, shackled. At alarm, Rhaegar raced half-armored, sword naked. He surveyed smoking parapet, corpses, leaking green flame already doused by sand. His gaze locked on captured infiltrator. "Who funded this?" he demanded. Othar laughed ragged. "Krakens gold buys many blades." Rhaegar's jaw hardened. "He meant to burn us at cradle." He turned to Arianne, bowed gratitude. She wiped blade, breath steady. "He meant to burn my cousins too," she said. "Dorne has long memory for fire." News traveled faster than raven wings. Within days, Stannis' fleet, still provisioning at Tarth, received orders. Sails north by northwest, intercept Ironborn reavers before they return to Pike. Stannis' jaw tightened. He barked deck commands, Storm's Glory leading vanguard. In King's Landing, Tywin studied report of Dragonstone attempt. Assassins bearing counterfeit Lannister war pennies among loot to frame his house. He crushed parchment, flame-devouring edges. "Balin expects lions will roar at dragons," he mused. "Let the stag answer instead." Meanwhile, on Dragonstone, Rhaegar convened war council. Ned by instant, Ravens offered Stark longships to augment royal pursuit. Oberyn volunteered spears. Mace Tyrell pledged sails to blockade Shield Islands should Ironborn strike Fairest shores. Alliances crystallized, as though the realm's disparate pieces had merely waited the right spark to align. Yet Rhaegar's thoughts drifted north still, beyond Krakens and lions, to spectral tales of undead and starfall and doom. He stood some nights on Dragonmon's highest spire, cloak whipping, eyes trained upon horizon where darkness seemed thicker. In gloved hand, he held the frost-rimed dagger Ned delivered. Its edge never dulled, its chill never lessened. He wondered if a crown could matter at the end of all songs. Behind him footfalls, Lyanna, hair blown loose, stepping beside. She slid arms around his waist, head against shoulder. "What hunts your thoughts?" "Storms," he admitted, "and the silence between thunder." She followed his stare. "Whatever comes, we face together. You, me, Elia, and when we tire, our children will lift sword and song." He kissed her brow. Below, night waves struck basalt. Spray hissed like distant applause. Weeks later, in a lonely chamber beneath Maegor's holdfast, King Aerys II stirred from disquiet sleep. Candlelight danced. Shadows writhed over walls. He rose, garments hanging loose from thin frame, and crept to iron-barred window. Far across black water, Dragonstone's torches glittered. "Rhaegar," he crooned, voice raw. "My son of prophecy." He pressed brow to bars. "But prophecy chose me first. I am fire. I am the last dragon. Lend him to wire." From his sleeve, he drew sliver of obsidian smuggled by unknown sympathizer, glitterstone sharp and cold. He turned it in shaking fingers, fascination gleaming. Then he pressed blade to palm, carved dragon sigil into flesh. Blood welled, ran hot. He smeared it on bars, whispering incantations pyromancer Lucerys once taught. "I will burn," he vowed, "and from my ash rise pure." Behind him, candles flickered green for an instant, then steadied. Aerys watched flame dance and smiled. And far beyond across a sea, none had crossed since Doom's roar. Black glass galleys slid from smoldering arches of Valyria. Sails, blank as void. At their prows burned steady lanterns of verdant fire, yet no man stoked them. In holds slept nothing living. Above the fleets, the red comet blazed brighter, as if drawn nearer each passing night, its crimson tail marking sky like wound yet healed, slow. Sailors from Ibe to Lys whispered that when its light fades, world's rivers will run reverse, and great dragons will wake howling from stone. In Westeros, harvest moon rose, huge and bruised. In fields men stacked final sheaves beneath wary stars. Children born that night would grow never knowing summers unbroken. In a study high in Dragonstone, Rhaegar Targaryen sealed scrolls addressed to every lord paramount, ink drying like black frost. They called banners, not for rebellion, nor for crown, but for life itself. As wax cooled under his signet, he whispered, "May the realm answer." A wind shook shutters. The hearth flared. A solitary harp leaned against the wall. silent string quivering as though a distant, tremulous note tried to form but lingered just beyond hearing, waiting for hands to summon the next verse of the song. A.K. Dawn found Dragonstone shrouded in a cool, persistent mist that clung to every tower, every rough flagstone. The fog so thick the sea itself was little more than a muffled, distant thunder somewhere far below the cliffs. The first pale light bled upward through the haze, ghosting the volcanic crags in silver, and making the centuries-old stone of the Targaryen fortress seem to hover between worlds. In this haunted stillness, Rhaegar Targaryen stood alone on the high battlements. Cloak wound about his shoulders, the frost-forged dagger Ned Stark had given him heavy in his palm. He turned it over and over, letting his breath plume in the cold. Each pass of the blade was a silent argument with fate, a wordless invocation of purpose. The mist gave him privacy from the world, but not from the shadowed responsibilities that now crowned his every waking hour. He watched the horizon for some sign, a ship's mast, a flare of unnatural light, even a dragon's silhouette burning in the clouds. But the world remained quiet, its secrets hidden for a little while longer. He had sent word across Westeros, proclamations and private letters alike, inviting lords and sworn brothers, old enemies and uncertain allies, to a council that would gather here at Dragonstone before the first snows truly fell. The letters were written with care and finality, an invitation to forge the peace, or to speak open their grievances before the coming storm. All would be heard, all would be watched. He had chosen Dragonstone because of its isolation, its symbolism, and its subtle defensibility. A place where ancient fire once roared, where new beginnings might take root if given half a chance. Below him, the castle slowly woke. The clash of training swords on the terrace, the clipped stride of Dornish guards changing shifts at the gatehouse, the faintest cry of his youngest son from the nursery. It was, for a moment, simply a home. Rhaegar closed his eyes and let the cold sink into him, a living reminder that duty and hope must walk hand in hand. By midday, the fog had retreated to the edge of the sea, revealing the swelling armada in the bay, dozens of royal galleys, Baratheon warships, and even a handful of squat northern longships that flew the direwolf on their sails. Couriers bustled to and fro between dock and keep. Supplies were unloaded, armorers hammered at makeshift forges, and cooks traded southern saffron for barrels of northern oats, the mingled scents rising up to meet the banners fluttering from the ramparts. Within the castle's great hall, Rhaegar and his closest counselors had assembled. Ned Stark, recently arrived and wearing the dark grays of Winterfell as if they were a shield. Elia Martell, wise and calm, her health flickering but her mind undimmed. Lyanna Stark, recovered and bright-eyed, a cloak of northern wolfskin around her slim shoulders. Arthur Dayne, unyielding as a mountain, the sword of the morning gleaming across his knees. Barristan Selmy, older now, lines deepened by care, but his voice still steady. Oberyn Martell, the Red Viper, restless and sharp as ever. And at Rhaegar's left, the young Prince Viserys, thinner and more watchful, his eyes darting always toward the door as if seeking an enemy only he could see. Varys glided into the chamber like a wisp of smoke, bowing deep before glancing up with eyes that missed nothing. "Your Grace, the Tyrell fleet is within sight, and Lord Mace requests leave to land before the hour's end." "Give him every courtesy," Rhaegar replied, motioning to an attendant, "and have the stable boys prepare for the arrival of the northern lords." Aelia smiled at that, folding her hands atop the armrest of her chair. "It is good that the North comes south as friends, not conquerors." Lyanna grinned. "Winterfell is built for war, but hopes always for peace." Ned said nothing, only nodded, eyes intent on Rhaegar as though measuring his heart against his words. Rhaegar met his gaze, and for a moment the hall's din fell away, leaving only the cold certainty that the peace they had forged was as fragile as any sword's edge. If he failed, if old wounds or new grudges split the lords, if dragons rose from ash or the dead from the snow, then nothing they built here would last. The next days were consumed by arrivals. The Tyrells debarked first. Lord Mace resplendent in green and gold, cheeks flushed with the prospect of royal favor. His retinue including young Loras and several minor bannermen, each eager to demonstrate loyalty to the dragon and the rose. Lady Olenna, the Queen of Thorns, came last, leaning on her cane and eyeing the assembled council with dry amusement. The errands followed, Harold Harding newly confirmed as heir to the Eyrie, the boy nervous in his feathered cloak but steady when pressed. Hoster Tully arrived with a retinue reduced by age and war, but bearing the Trout banner with pride. The Vale and the Riverlands, traditionally cautious, had sent their best, signaling at least the possibility of alliance. The Baratheon colors, though, drew the keenest attention. Lord Stannis arrived with the Storm's Glory, his face weathered and stern, followed by Sir Davos Seaworth, and a handful of knights loyal to the new Lord of Storm's End. No stag banner flew for Robert. His absence hung heavy over every table, his memory evoked by silence and sidelong glances by the unclaimed seat near the high dais. The Lannisters were the last to arrive, and the most watched. Tywin himself remained in King's Landing, sending his son Jaime with a contingent of Westerland's knights. Jaime wore the white cloak, but kept his helm under his arm, a reminder of oaths that bound him to the throne. Cersei and Tyrion were not present, though their names surfaced in many a conversation, half concealed behind the chessboard maneuvering of their house. From Dorne came Prince Doran, pale and contemplative, borne on a litter by silent guards. Beside him, Arianne, proud and dangerous, eyes flashing with her father's unspoken warning. There was also Quentyn, and even Oberyn's sand snakes, a sign of Dorne's seriousness. Every corner of the realm seemed to have sent a watcher. The Starks, too, were more numerous than the rest. Benjen, recently back from the Wall on urgent leave, Maester Luwin as Ned's advisor, and even young Bran and Rickon, allowed to watch from the gallery under the care of old Nan and a retinue of guards. Sansa and Arya stayed behind in Winterfell with Catelyn for safety, but their absence was felt in the way Ned lingered at windows or asked after ravens from the north. In the days of feasting and formal council that followed, Rhaegar listened more than he spoke. He watched. He weighed. The memory of the Trident's bloodshed haunted the room in every pause, every wary glance between lords who had once faced each other on the field. It would take more than royal proclamation to mend those wounds. The formal council convened in the ancient chamber beneath the Dragonstone keep, where columns carved as twisted dragons soared to meet the ceiling lost in shadow. Long tables were set in a broken ring around the high seat, where Rhaegar sat with Lyanna and Ilya to either side. At first, the lords were stiff, their voices clipped, their proposals laced with hidden demands. But Rhaegar did not force them to hurry. He let the council play out, allowed grievances to surface. He let them argue the shape of the realm. How should tax be collected from river and mountain? Who should command the fleets patrolling the narrow sea? What reparation would be made to those whose towns had burned or kin had been lost? It was not just politics. Old betrayals lingered. The Tullys resented Tywin for the sack of the Riverlands. The Tyrells eyed Dorne with suspicion. And the Martells remembered Ilya's brush with death under Arya's madness. Even among the Starks, there was little trust for the Lannisters. Ned spoke civilly, but his words for Jaime were frosted with contempt. Yet as the days passed, a slow thaw began. When Lord Royce of the Vale rose to challenge Stannis on grain levies, it was Benjen Stark who suggested a compromise, drawing murmurs of respect. When Lord Tarly of the Reach questioned Dorne's military contributions, Arianne countered with a frank promise of southern spears, in exchange for guaranteed water rights and safe passage along the Boneway. It was Oberyn who turned the room's laughter with a jest about the Viper and the Rose, a jest that became the signal for other lords to take their chances with old enemies, to test if a new future was truly possible. And Rhaegar guided the flow as a bard shapes a melody. He reminded them that the coming winter would spare none, that only united could the realm hope to withstand not just the machinations of the Iron Islands or the plots of the East, but the threat from the cold, silent North, a threat still dismissed by many as mere superstition, even as Ned and Benjen spoke of whites and shadows that moved with the night. For each doubt, Rhaegar had a word, a plan, a promise of grain or gold, or protection. He offered every lord what they most craved: the dignity of being heard. Late on the third night, after the great fires had burned low, and most lords had drifted to their beds, Rhaegar lingered in the council chamber with Ned, Stannis, Jaime, and Oberyn. A cask of sour Dornish wine sat open on the table between them, and the conversation had turned from treaties to the burdens of leadership. "You do not wear the crown," Stannis observed, watching Rhaegar with a mixture of respect and challenge. "Will you, or will you leave the realm to perpetual regency?" Rhaegar sipped his wine, letting the question hang. "A crown is not a helmet. It does not shield the realm from storms, only from vanity. Until my father dies, I serve as regent. When that day comes, if it comes, I will accept the will of the council and the gods." Menendar. Oberyn leaned back, a wicked glint in his eye. "Most men would seize what's already theirs by right and never look back, and lose what's truly worth keeping," Rhaegar replied, his gaze steady. "The realm will have peace. I will see to that, even if I must be remembered as little more than a steward." Jaime laughed, but quietly. "You ask us to put down our swords, then live forever with men we might one day be called to fight again. It is better to die 1,000 small deaths in peace," Ned answered, "than to see another river run red for a generation." They drank to that, and for a little while the ghosts of the past seemed to recede. Yet not all ghosts were so easily banished. On the 6th night, a great storm lashed the island, hammering Dragonstone with rain and wind that howled through every crack in the keep. By the time dawn crept through the battered windows, word spread that a Braavosi ship had run aground on the far side of the island. The survivors, half drowned, were brought to the castle for questioning. Rhaegar himself received the leader in his private solar, a thin, gray-bearded man named Maro, whose accent was thick with the slant vowels of the free cities. He bowed low. "Your Grace, we bring word from Braavos, of dragons, and of the doom that follows their wake." Rhaegar stiffened. "Speak plainly." "We saw them with our own eyes, fleeing the fires that sweep the coast of Valyria. Black ships, their sails torn by a red wind, shadows in the shape of beasts, winged, clawed, their eyes burning like forged coals. They came from the smoking lands and made for the coast of Volantis, burning every ship that tried to cross their path. My captain sent me to carry word. Others were not so fortunate." "Then Nitter," Rhaegar pressed. "And the men aboard these ships, were they alive?" Maro shook his head. "Dead, I think. Or worse. Some moved as though sleepwalking, their mouths filled with ashes. In Volantis they say the black ships bear not men, but the dead. I would not believe, but I saw. I saw a hand that moved in darkness, and when we fled, it left frost upon our deck." "Nen." He shivered, the memory plain on his drawn face. Rhaegar dismissed him with gifts, and sent for Oberyn, Ned, and Elia. "We can no longer ignore these tales," he told them. "The wall may not be the only barrier we need. If there are powers moving beyond Valyria, we must prepare. Old Town must be warned, the Night's Watch reinforced, and the Council must accept that the true war may come not from men, but from the old darkness itself." "Nenan." Elia spoke quietly, her hands tight around the arm of her chair. "You have prepared as well as any could, but you cannot fight Winter's Shadow with only mortal arms. Will you seek for dragons, as the tales say you must?" Rhaegar turned to the frost-forged dagger. "If prophecy is true, then I must. But I will not abandon the realm in its hour of need. If dragons rise, they must rise for all the realm, not for a single house." "Neil." "And if prophecy is false?" Oberyn asked, the old skepticism lurking behind his smile. "Then we will do as we always have," Ned replied. "We will stand together or fall alone." Throughout the week, rumors thickened like a gathering storm. The Ironborn raiders who had failed to burn Dragonstone vanished into the sea, but their attempt had shown the Council that the islands could never be trusted for long. Balon Greyjoy's message arrived on the 3rd day, a curt missive refusing any further peace and daring the realm to invade. Rhaegar answered with a measured warning, making it clear that a full muster would follow if the Ironborn struck again. But he did not move too quickly. He let Stannis and Ned consult with the Riverlords and Westerlands captains, building consensus before the next move. In the castle's lower halls, Sir Davos Seaworth, trusted by Stannis and valued by Rhaegar for his honesty, supervised the stores and supply for the fleet. He counted casks and barrels, made ready the Dragonstone ships for war, or for the relief of the wall, whichever need proved more urgent. He spoke with sailors, learning of their fears, their hopes for their families should war come again. It was these men, Davos knew, who would pay first and most if the Lord's council failed. On the 7th night, the formal council convened for its final session. Rhaegar stood before them, the harp set aside, the frost-forged dagger at his belt. "You have spoken your grievances. You have argued your claims. I have listened, and I have learned. But now, as regent, I must act." He let the silence fall, holding each lord's gaze. "The realm will have peace. All those who lay down arms and pledge their fealty will be pardoned. Trade between the north and the south will be restored. Old Town will be empowered to raise new walls, with gold drawn from the royal treasury to defend against whatever shadow comes from beyond the sea. The wall will be supplied, and the Night's Watch reinforced with men and coin and steel." He let his voice deepen. "But if the Ironborn raid again, if Dorne or the Reach rise against each other, or if any house seeks war for old grievances, know that you will face not just the king's justice, but the united strength of the realm. We will be one realm, or we will be nothing." There was a long silence. Then Lord Tyrell stood, nodding once. "The Reach stands with the crown." One by one, the others followed. The Lannister contingent, led by Jaime, knelt and renewed their oaths. The Starks, and Benjen, offered their swords. The Riverlands, the Vale, Dorne, even the Baratheons through Stannis, pledged their loyalty. And in that moment, something shifted. The council, fractured by war, became again a council of the realm. It did not mean all was healed. Even as the lords feasted in the great hall, Varys made his rounds in the shadows, listening for whispers of discontent. He noted those who drank too much, who watched Rhaegar with envy or hate. He marked the coin that changed hands, the sudden absences from table or chamber. And in the kitchens, a servant was discovered murdered. His throat slit and a coin left on his tongue. An old Braavosi custom. But here a message: the faceless men were watching. Rhaegar received the news with a stillness that unnerved his council. "We will answer with vigilance, not terror," he said. "Increase the watch. Question all who enter or leave. But let no innocent be harmed. The realm must not descend again into fear." In private, he consulted with Elia and Lyanna. "We are surrounded by old enemies," he confessed. "Yet we cannot shut out the world and hope to survive. If dragons rise, if the dead march, we must have more than swords and fire. We must have trust, and that is the hardest thing of all." "Namsho." Lyanna squeezed his hand, her face resolute. "You have our trust, and you have the children's future to protect. That is enough." Elia, weary but smiling, nodded. "Remember the song, Rhaegar. Even the coldest night must break for dawn." Days turned to weeks. The council disbanded. The lords returned to their castles and keeps, their hosts swelling the inns and byways of the realm. News from the north was watched more keenly now. Reports of wildlings massing beyond the wall. Tales of a great host gathering under a banner of broken bones and blue fire. In the east, rumors reached Dragonstone that the black ships from Valyria had been sighted off the coast of Pentos, their decks empty, their hulls streaked with something that glimmered like ice. On Dragonstone, life resumed its rhythms. Rhaegar spent his days overseeing repairs, hearing petitions, and training with his sons and daughters in the yards. He wrote letters to Old Town, urging the Archmaesters to gather every scrap of lore on dragons and wights, obsidian and wildfire. He sent funds north to Winterfell and the Wall, and made ready for the winter that he knew would soon touch every heart in the realm. He spent his nights with his family, reading to Rhaenys and Aegon by candlelight, listening to Lyanna recount stories of the old gods, sitting. Pass. Night pressed in over Dragonstone. A dense blue velvet that seemed to muffle the very roar of the sea below. The wind in the castles twisted stones, even the laughter and clatter of the great hall. By midnight, the torches along the eastern battlements guttered in their brackets, pools of amber light on slick, rain-darkened stone. The royal solar was warm with lamplight, a contrast to the restless, haunted dark outside. And Rhaegar Targaryen stood at the wide window, fingers tracing the cold, salt-frosted glass, watching clouds scud low and fast across the crescent moon. From this height, the world looked so small, and the troubles of men, war, ambition, vengeance, prophecy, smaller still. Yet he could not sleep. It was not fear that kept him wakeful. He had become well acquainted with fear, and it had lost its edge, but something more insidious. The certainty of being needed, pressed on all sides, the sense that every hour without progress or assurance might see some hard-won hope lost again. The council had departed only 3 days before, but already messengers brought troubling reports from every quarter of Westeros. The sea to the east had gone wrong. Trade ships out of Pentos and Myr brought tales of burning vessels, of ghost ships with black glass hulls, sails rotting but moving against the wind. In Braavos, the faceless men had sent word, blunt and blood-chilling, that gift was offered to those who would war upon the living and defy death. At Old Town, a strange pestilence raged in the dockside wards, and in the Vale, Harold Arryn's envoys reported an unseasonable snow that froze his banners into boards of ice. Rhaegar's mind returned, again and again, to the starkest warnings. Ravens from Castle Black reporting the disappearance of entire wildling villages north of the Wall. Tales of men and women found frozen in their beds, with the same glazed white milk eyes as the dead things Benjen Stark had described. And all the while, that memory of the Braavosi survivor, his terror of the dead men's ships, gnawed in Rhaegar's skull like a worm. There was an undercurrent to it all, a whispering in the marrow of Westeros. Something was coming. He pressed a hand to the glass, watched his breath fog on the pane, and forced his thoughts to the present. There was work to be done, even now. He turned from the window and crossed to the writing desk, where scrolls and open ledgers formed ramparts of their own. Troop tallies, supply lists, the latest letters from Lord Commander Mormont, from Stannis and Davos and the Tyrell's portmasters at Old Town. He dipped his quill and began to write. Each letter a stone laid against the coming dark. By dawn, the wind changed. It carried with it the sharp bite of winter and the distant, acrid scent of burning pitch. Rhaegar descended from the solar and paced the battlements, pausing as Arthur Dayne approached, already armored, white cloak trimmed with hoarfrost, face grave. "My prince," Dayne said quietly. "2 ships have limped into the harbor. One Myrish, one Lizeni. Their captains report a third, Braavosi, lost 2 days ago. Taken by the dead men's ships, they say." Rhaegar felt cold slide into his bones. "Bring the captains to the stone drum. Post archers at the harbor. None are to disembark without my leave. If any man seems sick or touched by a chill, have Maester Garrett see to them. And send for Sir Barristan and Lord Stark. We will hear these tales together." Dayne bowed, his face unreadable. Rhaegar continued down, boots ringing on the spiral stairs, feeling with every step the weight of ancient stone. A weight now matched by the burden of a whole realm's expectation. The stone drum was a round chamber, high-ceilinged, with heavy wooden doors barred against the worst tempests. Here, beneath banners faded by salt and time, Rhaegar found Ned Stark already waiting. The Lord of Winterfell looked as if he had not slept. Yet his gaze was clear, his sword belt easy at his hip. Elia entered next, bundled in furs, and then Barristan, his white cloak a shield against more than the cold. The captains were brought in. One tall, olive-skinned, the other short and red-bearded. Their clothes stiff with brine. Their stories matched in every particular. They had seen ships rise from the mists off the smoking coast. Hulls painted with frost. Sails shredded but moving with dreadful purpose. No men showed themselves above decks, but when the wind died they heard singing. kind of low moaning chant, not in any tongue known to them. "We tried to flee," said the Irish captain, "but the sea froze around our hull, a rim of ice as thick as a man's thigh. We smashed through, lost 2 men overboard. The Braavosi ship did not break free. The dead things came aboard. Men, or what had been men, skin like blue glass, eyes blind but seeing. They took every soul, dragged them into the sea." The Lyseni captain shuddered. "It was not just men, your grace. There were things that moved like shadows, bigger than men, bones twisted, teeth long as knives. They made no sound. They hungered. Men." Rhaegar listened in silence, committing every word to memory. When the captains finished, he dismissed them to the warmth of the kitchens, posted guards at every exit. He turned to Ned and Barristan. "The old tales return," Ned said. "If this darkness marches south, the wall will not hold forever." "We must ready the realm," Barristan agreed. "And more, we must learn what weapon will avail against them. Fire, perhaps, or that dragon glass the maesters seek." "Yeah." Rhaegar nodded. "Arthur, send ravens to Old Town and White Harbor. Ask for every scholar who has studied the Long Night or the others. Ned, I need a list of every Valyrian blade in the north. If there are more in the crypts of Winterfell, or the keeps along the wall, we must have them." Elia, quiet so far, spoke now. "If the stories are true, and the dead things are led by some power, we must know its purpose. Prophecy speaks of a prince to unite the living. You must be ready to call every banner, not just for Targaryen, but for life itself." Rhaegar looked down at the frost-forged dagger at his belt. Its blade gleamed, throwing a strange light in the gray air. "If I am to be that prince, let me earn it by action, not by birth. The wall must hold until the living are ready to march together. And if dragons are to return, let them return to serve all, not just the dragon lords." He drew a deep breath. "Tonight, we will meet with every captain, every lord still in Dragonstone. We will begin to plan. The summons went out, and by candlelight that evening the stone drum filled with a tapestry of Westeros. Stannis Baratheon, his face a slab of stone, flanked by Sir Davos. Lord Tyrell's envoys nervous but eager to show their importance. The Velaryons of Driftmark, whose fleet ringed the island in a cordon of silver and black. Representatives from White Harbor and Gulltown. Lord Royce himself standing tall among them. And the Martels of Jaime Lannister alone wore armor, golden and dangerous, his white cloak trailing behind like a challenge. Rhaegar stood at the center, Lyanna and Elia at his right, Ned at his left. He spoke without preamble, his voice carrying the still air. "You have heard the tales of burning ships and dead men's shadows. You have heard the warnings from the wall. Some of you believe, some do not. But I will not have Westeros unready if the stories are true. The wall will be supplied. Every lord will raise men. White Harbor will assemble a fleet. The Reach will supply grain, and the Stormlands will send smiths north to forge arms. Old Town's maesters will collect every record of the Long Night and Dragon Glass. No coin or pride will stand between us and readiness." There was a ripple of protest, Lord Tyrell grumbling about costs, a Velaryon objecting to losing ships to northern waters, Jaime remarking that the Lannisters had yet to see a white south of the neck. Rhaegar listened, let them finish, then raised a hand. "We face not just Ironborn or Free Cities pirates, but the end of an age. If we do not stand together, we will all die alone." Nanton Hunter, Stannis, silent until now, spoke. "Let the men of the Stormlands be first to the wall. I will march within the week." Lord Tyrell bowed, if reluctantly. "The Reach will feed the Night's Watch, in any village that takes the Black." Ned's voice was iron. "Winterfell will send every able man not needed for the harvest, and we will gather what dragon glass we can. My maester believes there may be more in the foothills of the Frostfangs." Jaime shrugged. "The Westerlands will send men. My father will see to it." There was no warmth in his words, but there was a grim acceptance. Rhaegar nodded to each. Then let us make ready. Let the banners be called not for Targaryen, but for Westeros." After the council, as the lords departed to rest, Lyanna lingered by the brazier, watching the fire with thoughtful eyes. "You ask them to unite for the living, not for you," she said softly. "Will they follow, if the storm breaks?" "They must," Rhaegar replied. "There is no other choice." She squeezed his hand. "I will ride north with you when the time comes. Jon and I are of the north as much as of dragon's blood. If prophecy has any meaning, it must be in what we do together." He smiled, and for a moment the world seemed less bleak. Days blurred into weeks as the realm's machinery began to turn. Ravens flew, ships sailed, and the forges of the south rang with the music of war. At Winterfell, Catelyn Stark oversaw the gathering of supplies, the training of levies, the healing of old wounds. Bran and Rickon grew restless as the castle filled with men. Arya and Sansa wrote letters daily to their father, demanding news and urging him not to forget his promise to return. At Old Town, Maester Aemon, old beyond reckoning but sharp as ever, corresponded with the Archmaesters and Rhaegar himself, sending scrolls that catalogued every mention of the Long Night, every scrap of dragon lore. The dragonglass mines were reopened, men and women alike sent to chip the black stone from the bones of ancient volcanoes. On the wall, Jeor Mormont greeted the arrival of Stannis Baratheon's vanguard with a mixture of pride and relief. The watch swelled in number. The wildlings who had crossed south found themselves suddenly welcomed and fed. Samwell Tarly, timid but clever, became the de facto scholar of the Night's Watch, poring over ancient tomes and aiding the maesters in their search for forgotten knowledge. And all the while, the sky changed. The red comet burned brighter each night, its tail now visible from King's Landing to Bear Island. Sailors called it the Sword of Heroes. Septons claimed it was a sign of doom. Only a few dared say what it truly was: a warning. In the east, the black ships spread terror. The Free City sent envoys to Dragonstone, begging aid, promising gold, ships, men, whatever Rhaegar would demand to keep the dead from crossing the narrow sea. Rhaegar sent what help he could: advisors, shipments of dragonglass, even a handful of knights. But he kept his strongest force in reserve, knowing the true battle would be fought at the Wall, or perhaps in the very heart of Westeros. The royal family prepared as well. Elia, growing ever frailer but determined, oversaw the education of Rhaenys and Aegon, teaching them languages and history, making sure they understood not only their birthright but the responsibilities it entailed. Lyanna trained daily, both with sword and bow, her confidence and health a wonder to those who had nursed her through fever and pain. She rode the cliffs with Jon on her saddle, telling him tales of the wolf and the dragon, stories she hoped would give him the strength he would need. Rhaegar spent his nights composing letters, reading prophecy, conferring with his council, and when he could, playing his harp in the quiet hours. He found peace, if not certainty, in music. Chords that seemed to echo the old magic of Westeros, songs that brought sleep to his children and hope to his heart. One such night, as snow fell thick and silent outside, he was interrupted by the arrival of Varys. The spymaster bowed, his eyes glittering with urgency. "Your Grace, a message from the east. Volantis has fallen. The black ships broke the harbor. The dead walked the streets. Survivors say the fire burned blue, and the shadows wore crowns of ice." Then, Rhaegar felt the bottom drop from the world. "And the other cities?" Varys shook his head. "Myr and Lys are barricading their harbors. Braavos closes its gates. But the ships keep coming. Send word to Old Town, White Harbor, and King's Landing," Rhaegar ordered. "Every port must be prepared. Close the harbors if need be. No ship comes ashore without being searched for the dead, and send ravens to the Wall. Tell them it has begun." In the north, the first true snows arrived with the new moon. Ned Stark rode the walls of Winterfell, watching the clouds pile over the mountains, feeling the cold settle into his bones. He remembered the tales old Nan had told, stories of the Long Night and the others, and for the first time, he did not dismiss them as mere legend. The people of the north responded to the call. Manderleys, Umbers, Karstarks, Mormonts all sent men to the wall and supplies to Winterfell. The lords and ladies who had once warred for every scrap of land now worked together, their rivalries set aside by necessity. The wall bristled with new strength, but Ned knew it would not be enough. He wrote to Rhaegar, "Bring the dragons if any remain. Bring the fire." The reply was swift, and it gave him more hope than he had dared to expect. Rhaegar's letter promised not only aid but a plan, a great council at the wall, where every house would be represented. There would be no more secrets, no more division. The time for unity had come. On Dragonstone, preparations began for the journey north. The royal family would go as one: Rhaegar, Elia, Lyanna, the children, the Kingsguard. The court would travel by ship to White Harbor, then overland to Castle Black. It was a risk, but Rhaegar would show the realm that he would not ask others to face dangers he would not face himself. The departure was somber, but determined. Elia, pale but unbowed, said farewell to her siblings and kin, pressing Rhaenys and Aegon to her breast before they boarded the ship. Lyanna rode at the prow, Jon in her arms, her hair flying wild in the wind. The people of Dragonstone gathered to see them off, singing songs of old Valyria and the promise of spring. The fleet sailed north under a sky of iron, the comet trailing its bloody fire above. At White Harbor, Lord Wyman Manderley received them with feasts and honors, but Rhaegar would not linger. They rode hard, the royal party swelling as northern lords joined them, until at last they reached the wall itself, a ribbon of darkness stretching across the world, crowned with snow, shimmering with hoarfrost in the pale sun. At Castle Black, the great council assembled. Every house of the north was represented, as were the Starks, Tullys, Lannisters, Baratheons, Tyrells, Martells, and Arryns. The Night's Watch was at full strength, the wildlings now allies rather than foes. The archmaesters of Old Town sent their wisest, and even the faceless men of Braavos sent an envoy, cloaked and masked, to stand in silent witness. Rhaegar stood before them, the frost-forged dagger at his belt, and spoke of unity, of sacrifice, of the necessity of setting aside old quarrels. He told them what the East had suffered, what the wall had seen, what the coming night might hold. "We stand on the edge of an age," he said, voice ringing across the icy courtyard. "If we fail, all our glories, all our banners, all our names will mean nothing. If we stand together, we may survive, not as dragon, wolf, or lion, but as men." There was silence, and then one by one, each lord came forward, knelt, and pledged their strength. The old order fell away, and something new took its place. As the long night deepened, and the wall grew cold, the people of Westeros found themselves united as never before. The White Walkers stirred beyond the ice, their eyes bright with ancient malice. But the realm was ready. Dragons or no dragons, fire or no fire, they would face the darkness as one. On the wall, as the first howls echoed across the frozen wastes, Rhaegar stood with his family, his friends, his rivals turned allies, and watched the horizon. He did not know if prophecy would be fulfilled, or if the cost would be his life or his line. But he knew this: whatever came, the song of ice and fire would not end with a single man, a single family, or even a single kingdom. It would live, as long as men remembered to stand together in the face of the dark. And when the first snows of true winter fell, blanketing the wall, the fires in the castles of men burned bright, their light a promise against the night. Ishgahal. Winter's shadow spread over the wall like a living thing, seeping into every crack and seam, clinging to the ramparts of Castle Black and turning breath to vapor with every word. On the morning of the equinox, as the comet flamed overhead, painting the sky with a wound of red, Rhaegar Targaryen stood atop the icy heights beside Eddard Stark. They looked east to where a white sun tried to rise behind a veil of cloud and snow, its light a poor match for the cold beneath their boots. The wall's surface was treacherous, glassy with ancient ice, but Rhaegar walked it as if it were the marble floors of the Red Keep, the frost-forged dagger from Ned's own hand sheathed at his side. They were joined by Jon Connington, Stannis Baratheon, and the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, Jorah Mormont, bundled in bearskin and black wool, his face seamed and weathered. Down below, the yards bustled with hundreds of men and women from every corner of the realm. Black Brothers, Northmen, Reachmen, Stormlanders, Dornish, and the wildlings themselves, their long hair braided with bones and bits of colored cloth. The scent of wood smoke and baking bread rose on the air, strangely out of place at the world's edge. Rhaegar scanned the eastern horizon, his eyes seeking the subtle undulations that meant movement in the snows. "You say the scouts returned at first light?" Jorah Mormont nodded. "Benjen Stark led them out. 24 strong. They ranged as far as the Milkwater and the Fist, saw signs of fires, old, cold, as if a host had passed, and left nothing living in its wake. 3 villages empty, 2 burnt, not a body to bury." "Ah," Stannis spoke, his voice hard as frost. "And yet the dead do not leave their dead behind. This is no human army." Ned's face, half shadowed by his hood, was grim. "The old tales say the others raise their whites and march beneath a king of ice. My grandfather called them children's stories. But I have seen more in the last months than I'd believed possible." Rhaegar's reply was soft. "If there's a king among them, he has been silent too long. Now he calls his banners." He gripped the wall's edge, feeling the thrum of cold through leather and flesh. "Are the dragon glass blades distributed?" Jorah grunted. "Samwell's overseen it. We've arrowheads enough for every brother, and half the wildlings besides. Maester Aemon's taught the men what to watch for. Eyes blue as the heart of winter, flesh that shatters like glass in fire or sun. But some of the Southrons are still afraid. There's talk in the barracks that we fight shadows and ice, not men." "Stan," John Connington said. "Fear is good. It keeps a man from growing careless. I'd rather fear than bravado, especially when the foe is unknown." Stannis looked out toward the trees. "If the others break through, we'll need a plan beyond holding the wall. If they strike for Eastwatch or ride the ice rivers south, the kingdoms must be warned." "We're ready," Ned said quietly. "Ravens stand by at every tower. And my son Robb leads 1,000 spears at the last hearth, with Manderly's men at White Harbor. If the wall falls, we harry them all the way to the neck. Do you see?" Rhaegar nodded, eyes never leaving the horizon. "And in the south, Lord Tyrell readies Old Town's walls, and Lord Lannister arms the gold mines. Every village fortified from Dorne to the Dornish marches. It is not enough, but it is more than the realm has ever done in my memory." He turned to Mormont. "Send out another ranging. If they are close, I would know it by nightfall." Jorah saluted, the black feathers on his shoulders catching the pale sun, and shuffled away, boots crunching on the rime. Rhaegar looked down at the field below. Men moved in knots and clusters, archers knocking arrows of glass and steel, smiths sharpening axes, septons and priests of the old gods blessing the sick and the strong alike. Wildlings and Black Brothers worked side by side, the distinctions of history fading in the cold. At the forges, Gendry Waters, bastard of Robert Baratheon, his existence openly acknowledged now that the old order had broken, swung a hammer beside a grizzled Northman, sweat running down his face in the steam. In the kitchens, Arya Stark rolled dough into knots for hard bread, her eyes fierce as she watched every motion, her hair chopped short as a boy's. The unity was imperfect, but it was real. Rhaegar let the sight steady him. "There are those who say Targaryens are born for summer, for dragonfire and conquest. But I think winter is the true test. Let us prove ourselves worthy of it." The next days passed in a blur of frost and preparation. Ravens arrived at dawn and dusk, bearing word from the south. Lord Tyrell's letter was scented with rose oil and full of promises. The Reach would send another 1,000 men, with wagon loads of winter wheat and barrels of cider. Tywin Lannister's reply was colder, but equally firm. Every gold mine of Casterly Rock was fortified, and 200 knights stood ready to march north at the king's command. From Dorne, Oberyn Martell sent a crate of snakeskin-wrapped wineskins, most filled with fire wine, a few with poison, just in case. At night, the royals dined together in the great hall of Castle Black. Lyanna, seated beside Rhaegar, laughed and told stories of Winterfell's deep winters. Elia, ever pale, but never silent, taught Rhaenys and Aegon the names of the constellations as seen from the wall. Viserys, his ambitions tempered but not extinguished, trained daily with Arthur Dayne, and took his meals in the solar, often reading old histories of Valyria. Samwell Tarly, as unlikely a hero as any in Westeros, spent his hours translating ancient texts, sending every scrap of knowledge to the lords assembled. His findings were sobering. The long night, he argued, had only been defeated when men and children of the forest fought as one, wielding weapons not only of fire and stone, but of music and sacrifice, of something older than steel. Magic is not just power, Sam told Rhaegar, Lyanna, and Ned one snowy afternoon in the library. It's memory. The songs we sing, the oaths we keep, they shape the world as much as swords. The others are what happens when the world forgets itself. Lyanna's gaze was sharp. And what is it they want us to remember? Sam hesitated. The cost, of pride, of division. Every legend ends in blood or in a promise. We must choose which story to finish. Medard. On the eve of the first true battle, word came that Benjen Stark's ranging had not returned. The wall's sentries doubled, and Rhaegar himself paced the battlements through the night, his sword at his side, his dreams dark and restless. The frost-forged dagger, so light, so cold, felt almost alive against his hip. He stood alone above the silent sleeping field when a horn sounded from the darkness, a low, mournful note that carried over the ice. In the barracks, men woke and reached for weapons. In the stables, horses whickered and stamped. Ned Stark was first to join him. Sword drawn, his face grim. 3 blasts, he said. Others. A second horn echoed. A higher, almost shrieking note. Then, impossibly, a third, deeper still. The wall seemed to tremble beneath their feet. Below, torches flickered as men rushed to the gates. The snow began to fall, thick and silent. And the wind changed direction, coming now from the north, carrying a scent not of pine or cold, but of something older. Grave earth, moonless night, the promise of endings. The first whites appeared out of the darkness like a tide, their eyes glowing, their hands clutching crude weapons of ice and stone. Behind them moved the others, tall, gaunt, armored in translucent plates, swords of purest crystal gleaming in the dim. And at the last, high upon a skeletal horse, rode a figure crowned in blue flame, its face empty, but for the cold certainty of death. "Ready the fires," Rhaegar commanded, his voice steady. "Archers, aim for the eyes. The glass blades, hold them for the White Walkers." Below, the lines formed. Jon Snow, not yet grown but already a symbol, stood at the front beside Arya, their blades ready. The Night's Watch, wildlings, and the armies of the south gathered behind them, a living wall against the dead. The first clash was terrible, whites slamming against shields, breaking bodies with unnatural strength. Fire arrows streaked through the air, shattering the dead, but more poured in to fill every gap. The others moved like dancers, their blades freezing steel and flesh alike. Rhaegar joined the line, fighting beside Ned and Stannis and Jon Connington. The frost-forged dagger bit through the armor of a White Walker, shattering it to ice dust. He saw Arya leap, her sword, a blade of dragon glass forged by Gendry himself, striking true. He saw Elia at the rear, tending the wounded, her face a mask of calm. All through the night they fought, the living pressed to the brink. The wall itself groaned under the assault, and several times it seemed the dead would break through. At dawn the horns sounded again, not warning, but victory. The dead recoiled as the first sun broke the horizon, their forms dissolving in the light, the others vanishing into the white expanse. The field below the wall was a charnel house, bodies of friend and foe alike strewn in the snow. Rhaegar wept for the lost, then ordered the pyres built. No corpse would rise again. They buried the fallen with honors. Songs were sung, prayers offered to old gods and new. The living licked their wounds, mended their arms, and sent out scouts to track the retreating dead. For days, quiet reigned. Rhaegar met with his lords, his family, his friends, planning rebuilding, steeling himself for the next assault. The others had been beaten, but not broken. In the calm that followed, small victories bloomed. Arya and Jon led search parties to the woods, rescuing wildling children and lost men. Gendry's forges became the heart of the camp, his blades prized by all. Samwell's research uncovered a ritual, an old song of the children of the forest, said to turn the wind itself against the dark. The royal children, Rhaenys, Aegon, and Jon, played in the courtyards, watched by their mothers, their laughter a balm against the despair. Even Viserys found a place, training with the younger squires, telling tales of dragons as if he might conjure one by will alone. Rhaegar found solace in music, playing his harp each night for the men and women of the Wall, his songs binding them together, reminding them of what they fought for. Yet in his dreams, the comet burned ever brighter, and the face of the Night's King stared back at him. A face that was not alien, but almost familiar, as if the true enemy had always been kin to those he now called friend. As the long winter deepened, the true shape of the enemy emerged. Scouts reported a vast host forming to the east, greater than before. The dead now moved with purpose, flanking the Wall, striking at East Watch and Shadow Tower, seeking to break the line by any means. Samwell's ritual was tried, the song sung at midnight beneath the heart tree. For one night, the wind howled against the dead, driving them back. But the victory was temporary. The lords of the realm met in council atop the Wall, and it was there that Rhaegar made his fateful decision. We have stood upon defense long enough. The Wall may fall, but the living must not wait for the storm to break. We must ride out, meet them on the field, or at the Fist, or wherever the Night's King stands. If prophecy means anything, let it be in the courage of men, not in the waiting for dragons. None? Din. Ned nodded, his eyes proud. The North rides with you. Stannis, Duor as ever, agreed. The Baratheons are no strangers to hard winters. We march. The rest echoed. Tyrell, Lannister, Martell, Arryn. Even the wildlings, Tormund Giantsbane at their head, pledged their strength. The host of the living gathered, leaving the Wall in the hands of the women and the maesters, the aged and the young. Rhaegar rode at their head, his silver hair unbound, his armor chased with black and red. Beside him rode Ned and Lyanna, Jon and Arya, Stannis and his knights, wildlings and watch brothers. All banners stripped away, but for the sigil of the living, a white sun on black, forged in the fires of unity. They found the Night's King at the Fist of the First Men, his army spread across the snowfields, blue flames rising in the dark. The battle was terrible. Steel and dragon glass against ice, fire against shadow. The living pressed, broke, rallied, pressed again. In the end, it was not prophecy that decided the day, nor the will of gods, but the stubborn courage of mortals. Arya's blade struck true, and the Night's King fell, his crown of ice shattering, his army dissolving into mist. The cost was terrible, but the dawn that followed was bright. The Wall still stood, battered but unbroken. The dead were gone. Afterward, Rhaegar called his family in council to the heart tree, its red leaves stirring in the wind. There, he laid his sword at the roots and spoke to those who had survived. We have lost much, but gained more. The realm stands, not because of a single king or a single house, but because we remembered we are one people. Let us build a new Westeros, not of fire and blood, but of memory, sacrifice, and hope. Desperamo. He looked to his children, Rhaenys, Aegon, Jon, and to the children of his friends and allies, and knew that the future belonged to them. And so, as spring dawned at last over the snows, the song of ice and fire was not ended, but renewed, carried forward by all those who remembered the night and dared to hope for morning. Ka. Spring did not come all at once. It seeped in slowly, a pale gold at the edge of the snows, an uncertain blush in the clouds above the Wall. a gentling of the wind that carried the smell of wet earth and thawing pine. Rhaegar Targaryen stood at the southern postern of Castle Black, his hand on the ancient stone, listening to the slow, stubborn drip of meltwater trickling from the parapets. He closed his eyes, drinking in the rare silence, the hush that had followed the last great battle. Even now, weeks after the Night's King fell, and the dead had finally ceased their assaults, he felt it, the tension unspooling from his muscles, the tautness around his heart loosening by degree, replaced by something fragile and almost unfamiliar. Peace. But peace, he knew, was never simply given. It had to be built, shaped moment by moment, word by word, by people who had known too much of loss to ever take it for granted again. He turned as the door behind him opened, and Lyanna stepped out into the morning, the sun turning her hair to threads of chestnut and gold. She wore a cloak of dark green, northern wolf fur at the collar, but underneath it a simple dress, her hands bare. She joined him in silence, standing close enough that their shoulders brushed. Below, in the yard, the survivors of the host of the living broke their fast together. Wildlings with black brothers, Northmen and Dornish, Lannister and Tyrell, all distinctions blurred by the ordeal of war. Children wove between the tables, collecting scraps for the hounds. Arya was among them, grinning, her hair wild as ever, and Jon, now tall, broad-shouldered, his face shadowed by recent sorrow, carried a tray of steaming bread and salt fish. Lyanna watched him, pride and worry mingling in her eyes. "Do you think he will stay at the Wall?" she asked softly. Rhaegar considered. He is of both worlds now, Stark and Targaryen, black brother and prince. Perhaps he will find a new path, as we all must. She nodded. "I dreamed of this as a child, standing at the edge of the world, the winter broken, the spring coming. I never thought it would cost so much." "Nor I," he said, touching her fingers with his own. For a long moment, they stood quietly, letting the sun warm their faces. Below, the wind carried voices, laughter, song, the rough cadence of northern speech, mixing with the softer vowels of the Reach, the lilt of the Stormlands. The realm, Rhaegar thought, had been forever changed. The days after the victory saw a gradual transformation of the Wall and the camps beyond. First came the labor of burial, mounds of earth raised for the fallen, pyres built for those whose families would never come to lay them to rest. The Night's Watch led the rites, their words solemn, their ranks thinned but proud. The wildlings, for the first time, joined openly in prayer, offering gifts to their own gods, the old ones, the ones of snow and wind and stone. Sable and ice, dragon and wolf, all grieved together. Rhaegar presided over many of the ceremonies, reading names from lists that seemed to have no end, learning to shape grief into resolve. When he tired, Elia took over, her voice low and steady, her hands gentle as she poured wine and wept with the mothers who had lost sons, the wives who had lost husbands, the children now orphaned. Rhaenys and Aegon, grown so much in the shadow of war, helped carry water, fold bandages, collect firewood for the kitchens. Even Viserys, who had once scorned the Black Brothers as little more than exiles and criminals, took up a shovel, his golden hair lank with sweat, his face hard with a new kind of humility. The first council of spring convened in the great hall, the tables set with mismatched plates and goblets looted from 100 battlefields. The surviving lords of Westeros gathered, their banners mended, their faces marked by both exhaustion and hope. Ned Stark sat at Rhaegar's right, his eyes ringed with fatigue, but shining with fierce pride. Stannis Baratheon, haunted by the memory of those lost, presided over the logistics of rebuilding. Stone, timber, grain, and coin, all accounted for, all needed. Lord Tyrell's envoys, led by young Loras, promised seed and oxen. Prince Doran Martell sent engineers to help reinforce the wall and teach the wildlings how to grow in stone-walled villages. Oberyn Martell, his arm bound in linen, laughed as he accepted a tankard from Sir Davos Seaworth. "It took the end of the world to make us brothers," he joked, raising his glass. "Let's not squander it on old grudges." Jaime Lannister, his golden hair darkened with soot and wind, nodded. "My father sends word. Casterly Rock's gold is at the realm's disposal." On one condition: no more secrets between king and lords. If we're to build a new Westeros, let us do it in the open. Rhaegar met his gaze. No more secrets, he agreed. The age of shadows is over. Let us make a realm where any man may speak, and any child may hope. They raised their goblets, a simple toast to spring. The rebuilding began in earnest. The Watch sent out parties to clear the haunted forests, to root out the last of the dead that lingered, and to tend the wounded earth. The wildlings, who had once feared the Wall as the edge of the world, now crossed freely, some settling in abandoned villages, others taking service with the Night's Watch. Tormund Giantsbane, his laughter booming, helped broker peace with the northern clans, marrying one of his daughters to a Karstark and another to a Manderly. The clans learned to build with stone, to plant wheat and barley, to trade furs and ivory for southern luxuries. Samwell Tarly and Maester Aemon, old but unbowed, labored in the new library built beside the wall, assembling every scrap of lore from the war. Records of Dragonglass, accounts of the others, maps of the haunted forests, scrolls on the songs of the children of the forest. Sam wrote letters to Old Town, inviting every archmaester who would come to teach, and students from across the realm began to trickle in, bastards and lord sons alike, eager to learn. Arya joined the Rangers, ranging far into the north with her wolf at her side. Jon, after a season of silence, took the blackened truth. Elected Lord Commander by both Night's Watch and Wildlings, his hair now streaked with silver, his eyes sharp with wisdom and pain. He became a bridge between worlds, honored by North and South, friend and foe alike. Rhaegar traveled from keep to keep, meeting with every lord and clan chief, listening to their grievances, promising justice. He named Ned Stark Warden of the North in perpetuity, the title to pass through the Stark line forever. Stannis returned to Storm's End to restore his lands, but left his daughter behind at the Wall, promising she would learn both the sword and the histories. At Winterfell, Catelyn Stark presided over the rebuilding of the Great Hall, welcoming survivors, seeing that every hearth was lit and every mouth fed. Sansa and Bran returned. Sansa tall and poised, her letters already sought by half the lords of the realm. Bran wise beyond his years, his dreams still haunted by the song of the trees. In the Riverlands, Lord Hoster Tully sent word that the rivers had thawed, and fishing boats once more plied the waters. The Tully banner, blue and silver, was seen in every village, and peace, fragile as it was, held. Rhaegar summoned his family to the Godswood one evening. A private gathering, the children and Lyanna, Elia, even Viserys at his side. The heart tree's face was streaked with red sap, the grass still damp with melting snow. He knelt before the ancient trunk, his hands folded. "We have survived," he said quietly. "But surviving is not enough. The Song of Ice and Fire was not meant for kings alone. It is meant for all who live." Then he looked to Jon, whose black cloak marked him as Lord Commander, whose blood marked him as both wolf and dragon. "The North and South are one now and always. If I fall, you will keep that oath. If I am gone, you will remember it." Jon bowed his head. "I will, Father. I swear it by all the old gods and the new." Lyanna took Rhaegar's hand, her fingers strong and sure. "And I swear it as well, in the name of every mother who has known loss, and every child who dreams of spring." Elia smiled, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "And I, for Dorne and for peace, promise my children will hold to this path." Even Viserys nodded, humility in his posture. "For House Targaryen, I will see it done." Rhaenys and Aegon knelt, hands joined, repeating the oath as best they could. It was enough. As the summer returned, first with shy, tentative shoots of green, then with bursts of wildflowers, and the scent of new grass, the realm healed. The wall became not just a barrier, but a meeting place. A school, a trading post, a sanctuary for those with nowhere else to go. The old hatreds cooled, replaced by cautious respect. Lord Tyrell hosted a great tourney in the fields outside Highgarden, inviting knights from every land, including those who had once been enemies. Jaime Lannister jousted with Brienne of Tarth, and both laughed when they fell together in the mud. Oberyn Martell's daughters raced their horses against Arya, and the northern girl won to everyone's astonishment but her own. Rhaegar, crowned at last not just as king but as peacemaker, ruled from a rebuilt King's Landing, the city greened with gardens and vines. He kept a small council of lords and commons both, and no matter the petition, heard every voice. His children grew in a court where swords were sharp, but words sharper still. Rhaenys composed songs, Aegon learned the laws of trade and war, and Jon, when he returned from the north, taught them all to ride and hunt, to trust the wild as well as the wise. Elia and Lyanna ruled together, their friendship as steady as the stones of Dragonstone. When disputes arose between Dorne and the north, it was often their laughter that settled them. The libraries of Old Town filled with new stories, of the last long night, of the brotherhood of living and dead, of the unity that had saved them all. Samwell Tarly became Grand Maester, his letters treasured by every castle, his wisdom unmatched. Bran Stark, grown tall and quiet, traveled the realm as a wise man, telling tales to children of the time the world was nearly lost, and the day it was remade. There were still threats. Raiders from the east, pirates in the Stepstones, petty lords who would not bend. But Westeros faced them together. And always, when the sky grew dark and storms lashed the coast, Rhaegar would gather his family, his friends, and play his harp. The song was not always sweet, but it was true. And as he played, he felt the peace they had earned settling around them like a cloak. He thought of those lost, of Arthur Dayne, who had died at the fist of the First Men, sword in hand, of Barristan Selmy, who had gone into the wild beyond the wall, seeking whatever mysteries the world still held. He mourned, but he did not grieve alone. The realm had learned the lesson of the long night. To remember, to rebuild, to hope. In the quiet of his chambers, late at night, Rhaegar wrote a letter to his children. He told them of the prophecy, of the song of ice and fire, of all he had done and failed to do. He ended with a promise. We are not the sum of our banners or our blood. We are what we remember. The day will come again when darkness threatens, but if you hold each other, wolf and dragon, sun and snow, the night will break and spring will come once more. Essayed. He sealed it with wax and placed it with the others. A legacy not of conquest, but of peace. And outside, in the Godswood, the heart tree watched, its red leaves stirring in the wind, as the children of ice and fire played in the sun, and the world turned once more toward hope. That spring the thaw rolled slowly south, washing over the battered fields and ruined villages of the riverlands, glimmering in rivulets over stone bridges and lapping at the feet of burned-out septs. Where armies had trampled mud into bone and banners into shreds, young grass now pressed up green and urgent. The realm had known war, winter, and the specter of death so long that the silence seemed itself a miracle. All across Westeros, the living began the work of mending, still startled to find themselves alive. At Winterfell, where snow lingered in shady places, Ned Stark oversaw a new wall being raised around the broken granaries, the foundations laid thick and deep with the labor of both Northmen and wildlings. Bran spent his days in the Godswood, watching the crows, and listening to the slow groan of old trees, stirring with sap. Sansa and Arya helped tend wounded soldiers, moving from sickbed to sickbed with baskets of willow bark and new press bandages. Arya teasing the maesters, Sansa coaxing small smiles from those who'd lost kin. Lady Catelyn received a letter from Riverrun. The Tullys had survived, Hoster was dying but at peace, and the rivers were finally running clear. The letter smelled of home, and Catelyn wept over it for a long time, while Robb, his left arm still bound from a wound taken at the wall, sat beside her in silence. News from King's Landing came by Raven every week. Rhaegar's letters were full of measured optimism and hard choices. There were shipments of grain, shipments of steel, and small careful bundles of coin, sometimes gold, sometimes silver, sometimes coppers scrounged from the coffers of lords who had nothing left but pride. The new king's hand, John Connington, wrote too, his missives crisp and direct. The Red Keep was being rebuilt, the septs restored, the poorest quarters cleared of corpses and the sick. No longer a city of shadows and plots, King's Landing was a place of work. Yet no task was simple. The faces of the council had changed. Lord Tywin Lannister's health was broken by the long night. He lingered in Casterly Rock, delegating to Jaime, whose easy charm served the crown better than the thread of gold. Oberyn Martell returned to Sunspear, bearing with him a child conceived during the siege of the Wall. A daughter who would one day ride a sand steed to Winterfell and ask Arya to show her how to hunt. Mace Tyrell, ever the builder, oversaw a planting that stretched from the Mander to the Blackwater, promising bread to every hungry child. The Stormlands rebuilt under Stannis' stern eye, Shireen reading aloud the new laws of the land, her father teaching her how to wield sword and quill with equal precision. Rhaegar traveled endlessly, seldom sleeping in the same bed 2 nights. He rode south to Dorne and north to the Eyrie, crossed the King's Road at harvest, and walked barefoot along the docks of Old Town, talking with fishwives, smiths, and maesters. Where there was want, he listened. Where there was injustice, he judged. There was no great show of royal might, no golden host, no cruel punishments, no executions without trial. Justice, Rhaegar told them, would be as common as water, as simple as bread. In these travels, he was seldom alone. Elia accompanied him when her health allowed, her laughter lifting weary spirits and her kindness smoothing the path for every reconciliation. Lyanna joined for the northern journeys, bringing Jon and sometimes Arya, teaching them the names of every stream and every hill where their ancestors had once bled for winter's cause. Rhaenys and Aegon remained in King's Landing most seasons, schooling with the children of lords and small folk, learning not only sword and cipher, but how to be silent and listen. Rhaegar refused to keep them cloistered behind walls. They must know the realm they are born to serve, he told Elia, who agreed with tears and a tight smile. At each keep, Rhaegar and his family hosted open courts. There were nights of feast and music, yes, but more often there were gatherings around low fires, where Rhaegar played his harp and sang not of conquest, but of the men and women lost in the wars. Old lords blinked back tears, young knights bowed their heads, and children listened with wide eyes, hearing for the first time that their suffering had not gone unnoticed by the highest in the land. In the east, in cities where Westerosi had never walked, word spread of the peace that had blossomed in the west. The black ships that once bore the dead had been burned to cinders, their hulls destroyed with fire and dragonglass. The free cities reopened trade. Braavos sent envoys to discuss new treaties, and Mar offered shipwrights to help replace the lost royal fleet. Even the strange magisters of Korth sent gifts. A feathered cloak said to grant wisdom, a mirror that revealed what one must not forget. These things found their place in the king's study alongside dragonbone and winter roses, tokens of a world remade. Yet not all the East forgave. Whispers came from the ruins of Valyria, of men who still sought to tame the magic that had shattered kingdoms, who sought for dragons' eggs in the smoking stones. But these rumors were for another age. For now, the winds from Essos carried only distant threat. The greatest change was among the people. For the first time in a century, the great lords encouraged free movement across their lands. Small folk who had lost all could start anew in the Riverlands, the North, or the Reach. The Night's Watch no longer recruited solely from criminals and outcasts. Now, many volunteered for a season or two, then returned home with pay, honor, and stories to last a lifetime. The Wildlings, under Jon Snow's quiet rule, sent parties each summer to help rebuild castles south of the Wall. Trade blossomed between the Black Brothers and the clans of the far north. The children of the free folk married into northern houses, and old grudges faded with the snows. The first festival of peace was held at Moat Cailin, in the wide marshes that once formed the realm's most bitter boundary. The children of the north and the south gathered together, building wooden towers on the stone causeways, draping them with garlands of wildflowers. Arya and Bran judged the horse races, Sansa presided over singing contests, and Jon himself led a tournament of arms. The prize was not gold, but a new sword forged in the Black Forge of Castle Black, inlaid with glass from the old mines of Dragonstone. Rhaegar arrived at dusk, his hair streaked with silver, his eyes lined from too many sleepless nights. Yet, when he saw the laughter and heard the music, he smiled. and for a moment looked almost young again. It was here that the new oaths were sworn. The North and the Riverlands would never war again. The wildlings would keep the peace. The Southern lords would honor the rite of passage for any man seeking a better life. Lord Manderley, enormous and booming, announced a gift of 10,000 salted cod to the wildling children. Lord Royce swore on the moon and stars to open the gates of the Eyrie to any orphan by war. Oberyn Martell's daughters danced around the fires with the children of the Umbers, and even Lord Tarley, ever stern, allowed himself a smile. As the sun set, Lyanna and Elia lit the great lanterns of peace, their flames flickering above the marsh. Rhaegar took up his harp, and as he played the old songs, the people of the realm, high and low, sang together, their voices carrying across the still waters. That summer, as flowers burst from the earth and wheat waved in the fields, Rhaegar called his family and closest friends to Dragonstone. The old fortress, once so cold and forbidding, was alive with laughter and the cries of gulls. The towers were draped with banners in every color, and the halls smelled of roast lamb, fresh bread, and the sharp tang of sea air. Here, the king spoke at last of his own fears and hopes. He walked the length of the stony causeway with Jon, speaking softly as the waves crashed below. "You know what it is to bear two names," he told his son. "You will be called to choose, again and again. Choose mercy, choose honor when you can. But when the time comes, do not let the old wounds decide the future." Jon nodded, solemn and wise. "And if the world breaks again?" Rhaegar squeezed his shoulder. "Then you will help mend it, as we all must." He found Arya on the cliffs, teaching Rhaenys how to throw a knife. He listened to Sansa read a poem she'd written in honor of those lost at the wall. He watched Bran dream beneath the heart tree, his face calm, his body relaxed as if he had finally found peace in his strange gifts. At night, Rhaegar sat with Elia and Lyanna on the highest parapet, the three of them sharing bread, honey, and memories. They spoke of their children, of the realm, of the possibility that someday their grandchildren would never need to take up arms against each other. The moon rose silver over the sea, and the world was quiet. As the years passed, the peace held. There were troubles, of course, bad harvests, cold winters, a few southern lords who would not bend, a new rebellion in the Iron Islands put down by a fleet of both Northerners and Reachmen. But never again did the armies of Westeros march against each other. The wall became a symbol not of division, but of unity, a place of learning, of trade, of memory. In King's Landing, the Red Keep gleamed in the sun, gardens overflowing. Rhaenys and Aegon grew into their roles. She as a wise advisor, beloved by the commons. He as a commander, who prized caution over glory. Jon led the watch for many years, then returned south to raise a family of his own. His name spoken with respect in every hall. Samwell Tarly's library became the greatest in Westeros. Bran's stories shaped the dreams of a new generation. Arya traveled to distant lands, returning with strange gifts and stranger tales, but always coming home when the winds changed. Rhaegar himself, in old age, became more legend than man. Children listened to the tales of the king who sang as well as he ruled, who played harp beside the fires at Moat Cailin, who listened to small folk and lords alike. They remembered his wisdom, his sorrow, his refusal to give in to despair. And when, at last, he died, quietly, with Lyanna and Elia at his side, his hand in theirs, the bells of every city and village rang for a week. The people wept, and then they rejoiced, for his legacy was not a crown, but a peace that held. Beneath the heart tree at Winterfell, the children gathered. Snow fell softly, dusting red leaves, but the fire in the hall burned bright. Bran told the last tale, his voice weaving through the hush. Once, there was a winter that would not end, and a king who would not rule by fear. He brought together wolves and lions, snakes and stags, eagles and krakens, and taught them to stand as one. He taught them the old songs and the meaning of hope. And though the night seemed endless, the dawn came at last. "Now stir." He looked to his sister Arya, who smiled and tossed a knife into the air, catching it deftly. And that is how the world was saved, not by a single sword, but by a song. A song that lives in each of us whenever we choose to listen and to hope. The children nodded, eyes wide, as outside the snows melted and the world, once again, turned toward spring.